basically, in my view, just to use your language of personhood specifically, if you are a biological living human, you are a person. And ensoulment, you don't know when the child in the womb is ensouled. We have in the
thing that actually matters, the premise you're trying to smuggle in, we said it.
We don't know exactly when ensoulment happens. The truth, and there's a lot of Sharia law that's built in divine revelation. I think on a natural level, we can acknowledge that it's wrong to kill human beings.
No, she is appealing just to natural law outside of God again. Wait, I'm so confused. I feel like she's contradicted herself 3 different times.
By the way, that's why one of the many reasons I oppose IVF, because it's against the human rights of the baby to be frozen like that. But they're in a hostile environment. They're
True.
not going to survive without intervention.
Right? And the cops are granted the authority by my state, which I grant authority through my vote to do the law, and they'll come and they'll beat you up.
Okay, so do you think it's possible for the state to fail to enforce a right that they should be enforced?
Of course.
Okay. Who decides that? How is that to be decided?
I don't even... Kyla literally said, like, let's do legality. Liking and subscribing helps me continue to produce content and is greatly appreciated. You can also make sure to catch these debates live, either here on YouTube or in the description. There are links to my Twitch, my Kick, and my Twitter.
Thank you so much for the wonderful moderators that we have tonight and everybody who made it here, despite the crazy rain, and thank you so much to Kyla for coming out for this debate. Right now, in a neonatal intensive care unit, there are doctors and nurses working to save babies as young as 21 weeks gestation. Last year, baby Nash Keene was born in Iowa at just 21 weeks old, becoming the world's youngest baby to survive outside the womb. These children are no bigger than the palm of our hands. Their chests rise and fall under tiny wires and monitors. Every breath is treated as precious and worth fighting for. In those NICU wards, no one questions whether the child is a human being worth fighting for. And every single child in NICU in America has their legal right to life protected. Yet, only a few miles from here, within 10 miles away from here,
there was that, you know what was crazy? The shit, when Lila tweeted out, I don't think this was the same baby, I hope it's not. That fucking baby that she was like, oh my God, it's so precious that this baby was allowed to be born and breathe on its own for 2 hours before it died. That shit was crazy.
There are children at the very same age and stage of development that can be legally killed in an abortion business. At the Planned Parenthood facility in Orange, elective abortions are done up to 24
Ooh,
weeks.
Fawn, since the baby was only 21 weeks, would you still unalive it post-extraction under your moral system? No, I don't think so. If we knew for certain, I guess it wasn't like at all sentient. I don't prescribe any value to things that are like not sentient, obviously, but I don't believe 21 weeks. You probably have decent reason to believe it's sentient. My understanding, never done a deep dive, and you know, the uncertainty would have greater weight insofar as there's no like actual physical requirement from or like no violation of a woman's bodily autonomy, right? If you're like, you could say, like, you know, if we're uncertain to X degree that the fetus is sentient at this point, you know, abortion may still be permissible because we have to weigh it against the interest of the bodily autonomy of the woman, but you could hold that, you know, once it's outside the womb, even if we're still the same amount uncertain about it, because the interest on the other side, you know, no longer has to be weighed as heavily, it would not be permissible, but regardless.
The baby in NICU and the babies killed nearby, and that will be killed this weekend, are the same age, the same development, the same human beings. The only difference is their location. A society that fights to save the life of the child in one building while ignoring the child that's going to be killed in another faces a profound moral and legal contradiction. This debate is not about slogans or politics. It is about whether our law should permit the intentional killing of that child. The question before us is simple. Should abortion be legal? To answer that question, we first have to define our terms. Abortion, what is it? Abortion is the direct and intentional killing of a living human being in the womb. Surgical abortion is designed to tear the developing human apart. Chemical abortion starves and expels the developing human. Later abortions stop the beating heart of the human with a lethal injection. These procedures do not heal. These procedures end human lives. More than 2,800 children are dying every single day in this country due to legal abortion. Over 1 million children a year. This is the greatest human rights crisis of our time, and that's why I'm here. Here's the core pro-life argument. It is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human being. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. Therefore, abortion is wrong, and it should be illegal. Now, often the argument that I just stated, the hang-up that a lot of people have is the second premise that abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being. So the question has to come, What is the child in the womb, or what is it in the womb? And the science is clear that human life begins not at birth, but at fertilization. This is not a religious claim. It is a consensus of modern embryology. The medical
Nonfon, I deny P2. Well, I think even P1, obviously, is still smuggling. It's like smuggling in the premise of the person's shit. But yeah, it's not that, like, she does, by the way, it's crazy. She usually says always, as we were talking about, but that's removed now. to bring out, like, I've not, like I said, I've never done particularly good research or deep research into it. From my understanding, I don't think there's any sort of sensible argument that you could have sentience before 12 weeks, but maybe I'm wrong. 3 Democrats. True.
Developing human states, human development begins at fertilization. This highly specialized totipotent cell marks the beginning of each of us as a unique individual. From the moment of sperm-egg fusion, a new human organism exists with its own DNA, sex, and identity. It is not part of the mother's body. It is a separate and distinct human being. This is admitted by pro-choice philosophers.
I don't even know. Is that even? Does it mean to? I don't know for sure. It totally could. I wouldn't care particularly either way. Does it even meet the definition of individual organism at sperm egg fusion? Because there still is a process of, like, the egg has to accept the sperm in, and then it has to do its whatever fucking I forget what it's called, but there's still a process of developing, like, the unique human DNA and stuff. What's your cutoff? I don't know anything about it. Like, I haven't thought about it a ton. I think, like, if I'm being, like, especially precautionary, I would probably say, like, 12 weeks, but I don't think, like, from what I've read, that'd be, like, sort of the most precautionary stuff you could have or whatever. So I think probably something like 20 weeks would be relatively precautionary still, but I'm not going to have a strong position on it if I haven't done a crazy amount of research on it. Like,
including Peter Singer of Princeton, who writes, and Peter Singer of Princeton, by the way, supports infanticide for the first 3 months after a baby has been born if the baby has a disability and the parents wish it. He says, quote, "There is no doubt that from the..."
I don't even know, but is that even true anymore? I don't even know if that's true, by the way, because Peter Singer, why at 12 weeks? Because that's the earliest I've seen sort of, like, reasonably defended that there's some potential for sentience there, because that's when the first detectable brain waves between 2 parts of the brain that we feel are responsible for consciousness happen. I forget what they are exactly, but yeah.
First moments of its existence.
I don't. By the way, that could be true still. I don't actually know for sure if that's true anymore, because Peter Singer used to be a preference utilitarian, and, like, under that framework, he sort of didn't believe that babies or, like, infants had the sort of type of preferences that could be weighted as heavily as the preferences of other people. But since then, he's become a hedonic utilitarian. So I don't actually know if he still holds that position. And I don't even know. I don't even know if. I feel like I could be misremembering. I feel like his actual position was always just, like, it would be permissible to euthanize like, incredibly disabled infants who would go on to live, like, presumably horrible lives and expectation. But maybe he did support it just for elective reasons too. I don't remember for sure though. But who gives a fuck, bro?
Existence, an embryo conceived from human sperm and eggs is in fact a human being. At 22 days, the heart beats. At 6 weeks, we detect organized brain activity.
You have not, quote unquote, seen
this? At 8 weeks,
what?
fingers and toes form. By 9 weeks, a child can respond to touch. Just after 20 weeks, premature babies like baby Nash survive with help. Nothing magical happens at birth. The same human being is still...
What do you think of the next Democratic president running on a 10-week abortion floor? That'd be 70-30. I definitely, like, obviously Democrats should do that. Yeah, abortion's a big winning issue for Democrats, and it's even more winning, at least politically, if you just run at a floor level. I thought in this it mentioned stuff.
Simply in a new and beautiful location. Now consider the SLED framework, which identifies the only 4 differences between a life in the womb and a human life outside of the womb: size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. These 4...
This is the most... So there's a paper I read, skimmed the most, like, the thing that's in here, which is, like, the most precautionary one or whatever. Derby and Blackman 2020 have suggested that to err on the side of caution, we should regard fetuses as potentially sentient from 12 weeks, since this is the first time known projections from the thalamus. This is the first time of the first known projections from the thalamus into the chordal subplate. So I think that's probably the somewhat cautious. But
differences reveal the same value and basic human rights for a human outside of the womb of his or her mother's womb as much as a human inside his or her mother's womb. Let's examine S first, size. Size does not determine human value or fundamental rights. A newborn smaller than a toddler is
I bet that was going to be Erudite's argument.
Equally human. A toddler is smaller than a teenager.
I've never heard the Erudite debate abortion, but dear God, I hope Oh, it won't be that bad, bro.
Yet equally human. The child in the womb is smaller still, yet that only reveals the miracle of early human life. If size determined your worth or your right to legal protection from lethal violence, the strong would have rights that the small do not. That is not equality. That is might makes right. Next is L, or level of development. A human's level of development does not determine their value or their fundamental right to life. A 2-year-old does not think, speak, or reason like a 12-year-old, yet both have human rights. If cognitive development were the measure of value, then newborns and those with disabilities and those with dementia would all have diminished worth. The child in the womb...
That's the argument. Yep. I don't... Like, she has to know that's not that's not deframing that at least 90% of people making that argument are using, right? They're not arguing that like people with mental disabilities are necessarily like worth less than people with full cognitive abilities. The argument is just that personhood has to have some mental component to it. That's not like, it's just, if you don't have a mind at all, you aren't considered a person. Like that's all. That's a way more modest premise than we should have some weighting of human value based on whether or not you're fully cognitively developed or disabled or blah 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 blah.
Womb has a developing brain, a developing body, and a developing mind, because that is how human beings grow. Development describes a journey. It does not establish a hierarchy of whose life matters or who deserves the protection of the law. The next letter in SLED is E for environment. Our environment as humans does not determine our value. Whether you are from Zambia or New Zealand, you have equal human dignity and value and the same basic human rights. Changing location does not change your human identity or rights. A baby inches down the birth canal does not suddenly gain its human rights. This is not science, that would be superstition. If a human being's worth depends on where they are and not what they are, then no one's rights are truly secure. And finally, for SLED is D, for degree of dependency. A human's degree of dependency on other humans, including parents, does not determine their value. Newborns are entirely dependent. I know, I've had 3. So are people with severe disabilities. So are many elderly individuals. It is exactly your dependence as a young human that makes you both worthy of and in need of special care and legal protection.
People born without legs can thrive, albeit at a lesser rate. I don't know what I said that would ever make me think that I would disagree with that. Peter Singer, I don't even think Peter Singer would hold that if a child was just born without legs, that it would be permissible to euthanize them. Maybe he does. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it was for even more severe stuff than that. I don't know how to spell infanticide.
The child in the womb depends on her mother, totally, just as the newborn depends on her mother, totally. Dependency invites love and responsibility, but it does not erase a person's right to life. SLED makes something unmistakably clear. Every argument used to justify killing a child in the womb could be used to justify killing a child outside the womb. Every attempt to deny the humanity of the child before birth eventually undermines the dignity of human beings after.
He mostly, but not exclusively, discussed severe forms of disability, such as spina bifida or anencephaly. So, like, anencephaly is a pretty insane one. Mostly anaphylacephic. Is that how you would say that? Infants, like, don't live more than 5 years at the most. I think there's, like, a few documented cases of them living to... I think the oldest one got to 20. She might still be alive, actually. But spina bifida, to be fair, I don't think it's actually that serious of one. I think that's like a chronic condition, but I don't believe that's actually super like life-altering.
After birth. Our Declaration of Independence states that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our human rights, our first right, which is life, is not bestowed by democratic vote. It's not bestowed by governments or by other human beings that are more powerful than us. It is given to us by God, and I believe we are all made in the image of God. This is why. Why would
we do that? You know, why do we even have to? Why are you bringing up God? Why are we doing this? No. Oh my God.
The prohibition, do not murder, contains not only legal and moral weight, but eternal weight. Human life is sacred. So let's build a society together that protects fundamental human rights by law and embraces every new life with love. It's time to make abortion both illegal and unthinkable. Thank you.
Yet chopping up the good ones was fine? For who? Are we still talking about Peter Singer? Like, obviously, if Peter Singer, like, my understanding is Peter Singer holds that abortion is permissible. At least while he talked about his position on infanticide, he probably also believed that abortion is permissible at, in any stage during pregnancy.
Abortion is one of the most contentious areas in moral philosophy. Earliest writings on this topic are from Babylonian law, from the Code of Hammurabi, 18th century BCE. In this writing, it distinguishes mother from child, marking both valuable, but if a fetus is killed, it's a monetary...
What do you think about my stance against murder laws, Fawn Man? I don't know your stance against murder laws. I didn't see. I thought you were arguing with Grassroots Hegemon when you were talking about that still. I just hate... So you think? No? What? I just think that we can't, because people will be harmed argument, we shall have no law against murder, so some people will get caught for simple self-defense. We should have no law against... I don't know how that exactly ties into it. Who has made that argument?
Fine. While the mother is killed, the perpetrator receives capital...
With regards to... Is the analogy there, which to people saying, like, we can't have abortion laws because it may affect permissible cases of, like, abortion... in cases of life of a mother?
Punishment. I strongly encourage all of you to remember the code's ruling there, because it's going to come up again in an unexpected way. The problem with many debates and conversations on abortion is that it is highly emotionally charged. Now, to be clear, the emotions are not the problem. Of course it's emotional. Abortion touches on some of the deepest values that Americans hold. Life versus liberty.
Why did none of these fucking things have a citation? Where did Peter Singer talk about this? Where did he do it? I just want to read the original thing.
Meaning, death, tragedy. Parenting, family, love. I don't want us in this conversation to neglect our emotions. I'm a trained addictions counselor and psychometrist. I love emotions. What I want us to do, though, is understand that wise minds take into account feelings and logic. For the purpose of structure and clarity in this conversation, I want to break it down into its core parts. First is the legal conversation. Policy is, of course, downstream of morality, but it isn't a substitute for it. This is why, for example, we can all agree that cheating is wrong, but not that it should be legally managed. This would violate the penumbra of rights as Americans. Second part of the conversation is morality. What makes us human? What is the component of life we find meaningful? Is it consciousness? Is it personhood? Capacity for suffering? What even is personhood? What I will argue in this conversation is that regardless of your position morally on abortion, legally, decriminalization leads to the best practical outcomes.
Kill me. Okay.
Personally, when it comes to law, is to create policy that both reduces abortions and reduces harm and suffering for children, mothers, and women. I will show you comparisons between decriminalized countries versus highly restrictive states, and outcomes that make it clear that the only answer for abortion within our current welfare, education, and health systems is decriminalization. That abortion restrictions actually lead to more infant death, more maternal death, greater levels of childhood poverty, greater...
Michael, to bring out, like, I think that argument, I don't buy that argument to be clear, but obviously, like there would be some hypothetical point at which, you know, the law would do more harm than good. If it was the case that it truly, like, you know, stopped enough abortions that would be permissible, that it would outweigh any of the abortions to stop that would be impermissible.
Levels of foster care involvement, higher levels of childhood abuse and trauma, greater maternal poverty, and shorter lifespans. Morally, I will argue that abortion is often a choice between competing tragedies. Moral philosophy is the science of morality, using wisdom, logic, and argumentation to determine better moral prescriptions. A moral system must be functional, offering structures to evaluate one's actions as right or wrong to be useful. If your moral system, for example, doesn't provide an adequate structure to determine if your own actions have done right or wrong, it's not a very useful moral system. So when does somebody cease being a person, and when do they begin? Let's start with the Christian framework, which Lila and I both share, and I think you guys share. To me,
why are we doing this? No! Abortion is justified only under the non-consensual internal organ utilization, and that condition ends in viability once transferring stars postnatal killing is wrong, blocks infanticide. I saw you get that argument in my Discord, yeah.
To me, it's obvious, and I would dare any Christian to challenge
and
me.
And obviously that would apply to, like, the hydranencephalic influence too, that we were talking. Is it hydranencephalic infants? Infants with hydranencephaly? To those people as well, Michael. That's along the lines of the stuff I gave to that.
And leaves a body. Except every one of you in here are smart enough to know that this is complicated. When does a soul enter the body? When does it leave? Does it leave when the heart stops beating or the mind stops? What even is a soul? Does it have a material component? The Bible tells us when a body becomes ensouled or when it leaves. The Bible doesn't tell us when a body becomes ensouled or when it leaves. So we are left determining the answer, much like secularists. Moral philosophy often heavily focuses on the Cartesian consciousness that is self-aware and knows itself as an individual. You'll know this as, I think, therefore I am. For this conversation, I want to talk about temporal consciousness, which extends through past, present, and future, and can guide us on the fringes of when life begins or when it ends. In medicine, death is marked by the termination of brain function. Hold
on, wait. I don't even think Peter Singer describes any view about infanticide in here. I only just skim through it, but I don't even think, like, he's just complaining about people, like, not being open to, like, discussing it. Or, like, we're even, I don't even know what he said. I don't even know what he actually said.
When we are deciding about pulling the plug on a brain-dead person, we are essentially weighing what the past consciousness would have wanted and the lack of present-future consciousness, which is what we use to say, that person isn't there anymore. What would they have wanted when it comes to deciding to stopping their heart? At the beginning of life, there's no past consciousness that we can refer to. We know eventually there will be a future consciousness, and we don't know when the present consciousness precisely emerges. In many debates, anti-abortion activists insist that it is a scientifically solved issue. It isn't. It's a conceptual and moral issue that we use science to hook our present consciousness or ensoulment dates to. For a moment, I want you to do a thought experiment with me. It's from Alex O'Connor. Close your eyes and picture a triangle. All right, on the count of 3, I want you to tell me the color of that triangle. 1, 2, 3. Right, each of you could clearly see a triangle to such an extent that you could tell me the color of it. Where's that triangle? If I cut your head open, is there going to be a bunch of neurons that are arranged in orange or yellow triangles? No, it's fundamentally immaterial. It seems to emerge from highly complex brain structure that can't be localized to an area.
I guess I understand the point of the argument she's making. I guess I don't know. I don't know if that's the best argument, like what I would think would be the best argument for saying, you know, people are minds, but all right.
A molecule or a specific gene. As a Christian, this is what I consider ensoulment. This is why my moral line for where personhood begins is between 12 to 15 weeks. This is after the brain has developed 5 divisions that are central to a human being. Before then, they only have 3 sections, which is similar to a gecko. The onset of brain waves are also similar to those of other humans, which I consider a marker of ensoulment. Now, I want to end my opening with a warning. What often happens in abortion discussions is heavy front-loading with emotionally compelling stories and use of language to maximally shame the opposition or define away the conversation. I fear that this is what will happen in this conversation, but I hope it won't. It seems that...
This is an emergent argument if she's rejecting materialism in form of some kind of... She's just saying minds are immaterial. That's what she's saying right now. That's...
Could be terminating for the conversation by defining abortion as a synonym for murder, the intentional killing of a human life. Nothing new is being argued here. The negative valuation was just smuggled into the definition. This is intellectual...
Oh, yes. At least we got... I wish we focused more on this and the stupid... I don't want to say stupid. Other stuff she brought up about Christian ethics and about the, you know, legality being the most important thing or whatever. But okay, yes, finally. Yes, true. Thank you. Yes, finally. Woo. She's engaging philosophy of mind, but it's this only is relevant to a dualist about minds. Yeah.
Intellectually lazy, and it's a definist fallacy. And in a topic so important to our moral values, the burden of thinkers, but particularly for those of us with the mic we speak to, is to at least not be intellectually lazy. Oftentimes, Lila's argument is going to use equivocation by employing the term human life with 2 distinct definitions. She will say science agrees with her because biology defines human life as beginning at conception, genetically distinct organism composed of human cells. The biological definition, though, it has no moral weight because it's also applied to a brain-dead person. She then takes the same term, human life, and wields it with legal and philosophical definitions which affords a person moral consideration, human rights, and implies personhood and consciousness. Here's what I'm going to submit to you. Debaters and speakers who rely heavy on emotional front-loading and evasion of pointed questions are doing so because they believe that you, the audience, are stupid and easily manipulated with language and personal my goal here isn't to get you to just agree with me. I want you to think about abortion, what it means to be human, seriously, honestly, and be open to changing your mind. Here's a final thought experiment for you guys as I run out of time. I want you to look around really quickly and notice all of the brown in the room, and then close your eyes. What was red? Ringo, good one. What was red? If you open your eyes, you're going to look for it, and you'll probably notice a lot more red than there was brown. We often see what we look for, which is why a wise mind tries to look for what we are not seeing. So if you came into this conversation staunchly opposed to me, all I ask is that you genuinely hear me out and consider my arguments on face value. For those opposed to Lila, give her the same respect. Let the best idea win, not the idea we happen to like the most.
Thank you. At this point, we'll be transitioning into the cross-examination period, where both Lila and Kyla will have an opportunity to ask one another a series of questions. First, Lila will cross-examine Kyla. Kyla, sorry, whenever you're ready. You can take the mics, yes.
Incredible.
Can you hear me? Wonderful. Thank you, Kyla. Okay, so a few questions for you. First of all, you said that you believe that the biological beginning of life for you is different from personhood. And so you think personhood starts between, I think you said 12 to 15 weeks.
Correct.
And that's also, you're also arguing that's when ensoulment begins. Mm-hmm. And you're basing that on the brain development.
Correct.
Can you explain why then somebody who has severe brain damage is properly ensouled if they have severe brain damage or they have a severe brain development disorder?
I don't think that...
Let's say they only have a brainstem.
Sure. If they don't have a brainstem, they
only have a brainstem.
Okay, gotcha. In most of these cases, for example, I think we have Jackson, Bluebell, and I think there's a reason why Noah, you probably know his name, Noah something. Both of them were born with very little of their brain. The issue is that
I thought Jackson even had more than a brainstem. W dialogue tree. Like it literally she is just going to her dialogue tree. Again, I don't think, and Erudite was nice for pointing this out. However, nothing I've ever seen gives me the impression that Lila has actually done any serious philosophical stuff with this, like, it does just seem like she's trying to master the dialogue tree. I don't even, you know what's crazy? If you ask Lila, like, she'll say she thinks that hydranencephalic infants are, at least to some degree, conscious. I don't know for certain if she says that for baby Jackson, but I believe she does. Even Jackson, I think, had more than a brain stem. Baby Jackson.
First of all, they had a significant amount of their cerebellum.
It's about 80% of his brain missing. I don't know, is 20% just the brain stem?
The cerebellum was the main thing impacted. The idea that because they have less of a brain, consciousness doesn't exist, I don't think is sufficient, right? In the case of Noah, we saw that despite the fact that he only had 2% of cerebellum, by the time I think he was age 5, 78% had regrown, which suggests that neuroplasticity has a capacity to emerge consciousness when the predilections are there.
Sure. So
this is true. Yeah, I like this argument too. That's true as well. Like we observe. I think I had stuff on this from. I think I learned about this when Avi Bitterman and Beth and the Bulldog they did like a response to some person claiming that fish don't feel pain. Like it is true, like we observe like humans appear to exhibit some amount of conscious behavior or some behavior like associated with, or evidence of them being conscious when they have parts of the brain. When they like lack parts of the brain that in other people and like already developed people, we observe that if we destroy that part of the brain, like they know they lack consciousness. So it does seem to be the case that it doesn't always have to emerge from the same exact place of the brain. And if you are hydranencephalic, if you have some type of brain damage, you can still develop some sentience elsewhere in the brain. But if we take an existing person and damage that part of the brain, then they can lose that permanently.
I'm asking more specifically, you said the brain has a certain level of development between 12 and 15 weeks that you says your standard is ensoulment. So, but I'm saying if brain development is disturbed at that time and it doesn't do the level of, well, I guess it was the first question for you, what is happening at 12 to 15 weeks specifically that would give the child ensoulment?
We have the proper division of the 5 parts of the brain, right? We've got the telencephalon, mesencephalon.
But in the case of Jax or Noah, it sounds like they don't have that division happen.
They actually
entirely.
So
they're missing several parts of the brain entirely that don't develop.
So that's a bit of a misunderstanding about what happened in Jax's brain, right?
Okay.
So while yes, the cerebellum vastly underperformed, there was less cerebral cortex going on. There actually was still 5 divisions, and we can see that by some of the later development. For example, he moved into things that require the sensory motor system, which is like sucking.
But only his brainstem.
Yeah, I don't think Jackson only had a brainstem.
Unfortunately, the rest of the brain was not developed. It was only the brainstem.
That's not true in the case of Jackson. Otherwise, he couldn't have had sensory motor reactions.
According to the doctors that evaluated him, they said only his brainstem had existed.
Yeah, so
and people were surprised that he actually survived, Kyla.
They were, right.
Surprised that he even had sensory motor skills, which would speak to the soul being able to emanate from him even without the entire brain existing. And there are a lot of cases, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a lot of cases where people have severe brain issues or developmental disorders or injuries, and they still, because of their soul, are able to do things that otherwise are not scientifically explainable. Are you familiar with any of those cases?
I am. So one of the issues is that I think you're maybe misunderstanding the neuropsychology. So when we say, for example, that somebody just has a brainstem at birth, that doesn't mean that there isn't like potential for like neural proliferation, because after birth we still see a fair amount of neural proliferation.
I don't think his brainstem is thinner than it should be, and his cerebellum did not form properly, but that doesn't imply that he had no cerebrum.
Particularly when you ease, in this case, the hydranencephaly, which is, I believe, both of these cases of Noah and Jackson, right? So the idea that the cerebral cortex just didn't exist isn't really true. It was greatly reduced. Even in the case of Jackson, yes, he was born with dominantly the brainstem, but there was also the buddings of a cerebral cortex, which is the things that
I guess then the question was, what exactly is your standard? Then just to make sure I can pinpoint this correctly in terms of.
What do you consider to be consciousness if I snap open a clam and it will try and close it on you at? I think I understand the question's a little grammatically weird, but like my understanding is clams don't I don't think they have any of the components sort of necessary to be conscious or sentient. I think it like broadly you probably have to have some type of central nervous system. You have to have some structure of a brain, which you can have. There were sort of like different types of brains that animals have or whatever, but like every animal that we observe to have some type of behavior that's associated with sentience or evidence of them being sentient, they have some central nervous system, they have some brain that seems to be the thing that that drives that
development. You said between 12 and 15 weeks. Can you state exactly what you would say is a standard for ensoulment with brain development?
I think that's
it's beyond brainstem, it sounds like.
Sorry?
It's beyond the brainstem, you're saying.
That's why I said the 5 divisions of the brain.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the 5 divisions of the brain?
But just to be clear, if they're missing some of the divisions of their brain, are they ensouled?
Yes.
Okay, but you just said ensoulment was tied to the 5 divisions of the brain.
Because the issue is that the 2 examples that we're giving don't miss the 5 divisions of the brain. So I guess, sorry, the answer should have been maybe not. I'm not entirely sure.
So if someone is missing a division of their brain, are they ensouled?
Fun, your moral system is awkwardly close to eugenics. Very base, brother. Okay. I don't think that's really true unless your definition of eugenics is just like really dumb.
No, probably not.
If someone has an injury where one of the divisions of...
I agree, but they do. Mutuals do have a central... I thought they didn't. I could be thinking of something else. Because I know there are vegans who will eat like some seafood because they eat animals that like don't have a central nervous system.
Their brain is destroyed. Are they ensouled?
It really depends on
Do
which
they lose their
division
soul?
of the brain. Huh?
Do they lose their soul?
Which division are we talking about? The telencephalon, the mesencephalon? Like the thing
You
is,
pick any division.
Google is telling me clams don't have
well, in
a
the case
central
of
nervous
mesencephalon,
system.
no, definitely not. Right? That would be.
So is there?
It feels like what's happening in this conversation is I don't think you know what the 5 divisions of the brain are.
I'm
which
trying
is
to.
fine. I can explain them to you. The issue
I'm
is
trying
that
to
if you want
identify your standard for ultimately making abortion legal, which is what this conversation is about.
I'm trying to grant it to you, but if I'm using esoteric language that maybe is like losing you in my argumentation, you can just.
It's not losing me. Your standard is that you need all 5 divisions of your brain to be considered ensouled and legally protected.
I think the 5 divisions of the brain and the brain activity as well are 2 proxies that we can use to best estimate when ensoulment occurs, because I think consciousness.
And I'm saying if someone has a division of their brain damaged or there's a failure for it to develop properly, are they ensouled?
It depends on which division of the brain is damaged.
Got it. Here's another question.
Hold on. Before you move on, I'm not going to let you move on.
in your cross-sex because I have 4 minutes left.
Well, I'm not asking you a question. I'm clarifying.
Okay.
In the case of a
Go for it.
mesencephalon, that would be the sheath around your brain that would be gone, right? I don't think that somebody would be not ensouled there, right? But for example, if somebody doesn't have a brainstem, they can't even be alive. And these are some of the things. I think when we look at the divisions of the brain and the brain activity, it's the best proxy that we can use right now for understanding a concept as convoluted as ensoulment. Because I think consciousness is the thing that we're weighing here, and the brain activities is important to that.
Sure. Okay.
I have no clue. I don't even. It's silly. I don't even know. I don't even know where the hell in the Bible you could derive any view of like when people get their ensoulment from, but whatever.
I guess another question for you then. So, would you say that, let's say there is a child at 11 weeks old?
Okay.
Would you say it would be listed?
Would you kill it? It's just nonsense babble. Yeah. Would you if there's a child born at 11 weeks old? Would the parents have a right to kill it?
Abort them for any reason?
Oh, but I thought it was gonna be the dialogue treasury does. Oh, don't you know there's been babies delivered prematurely? Would you allow them to be?
Okay.
Would you say it would be licit to abort them for any reason?
So this is tough. My legal position is it should be all decriminalized. It should be always between
Up until the moment of birth.
Sorry?
Up until the moment of birth.
That's what decriminalization means. Yeah.
Okay. So I do know what that means, but appreciate that. So up until the moment of birth, you believe that abortion should be legal. This includes ensouled babies with all 5 divisions of their brain.
Clarify.
So you would say it should be legal to kill ensouled babies with all 5 divisions of their brain.
It should be legal, but that doesn't mean it's moral.
Okay, but you think it should be a legal right.
It should be a legal right.
So does somebody who is ensouled, just to be clear, someone who is ensouled with all 5 divisions of your brain, your standard for personhood, they are actually not legal persons that have a right to life. They don't have any legal rights.
Complicated here because I think, for example, when you look at Canada, right? Canada has a fully decriminalized system. We basically see almost no abortions past my ensoulment marker. Almost all of them exclusively are going to be like medical exceptionalism, which I know you take issue with medical exceptionalism, which we can get to, right? But in the case of decriminalization, we see almost
I'm just asking for your legal
abortions
standard.
underneath. Yeah, my legal standard is it should be decriminalized. But the reason for this is because decriminalization reduces abortion and improves the well-being of children, women, and mothers.
Just to be clear, though, let's just be clear, because all of the arguments for decriminalization, as you named them, and we'll talk about more, I'm sure, in our discussion, open discussion, have to do with the quality of life for the mother of the child, which is very important, by the way. And for a newborn child,
No, that's not all that reduces.
For many of them,
It's a
I'll say.
reduction of abortion and the improvement in well-being.
Okay,
Those are
so
both of my
just
positions.
I'll grant you that. So what would be the difference between a newborn person who's ensouled
Yeah,
with all
gotcha.
5
It's my
divisions of your brain, your
understanding.
standard,
And brainwaves.
and brainwaves, and a child weeks before birth that also has brainwaves, all 5 divisions of their brain in a person? Why does one have a legal right to life and one doesn't?
At that case, essentially, what we see in Canada, I'll give you actual practical.
I'm very familiar with Canada, and there are later term abortions that happen in Canada.
There
in
are,
the legal
yeah,
system.
and so some of them.
Why are we
can be
doing
elected.
this?
Some of them also
She's
get-
not even. I don't even think she's doing a dialogue tree effectively, bro. Because she's trying to do some weird continuum fallacy or like intuition pump stuff.
Also
where
has
she's-
brainwaves, all 5 third.
And brainwaves.
I'm sure, and brainwaves, and a child weeks before birth that also has brainwaves, all 5 divisions of their brain in a person. Why does one have a legal right to life and one doesn't?
At that case, essentially, what we see in Canada, I'll give you actual practical.
I'm very familiar with Canada, and there are later term abortions that happen in Canada in the
There are,
legal
yeah.
system.
And so some of them
and they can be elective too.
Some of them also get investigated. So what happens in
kill me.
decriminalized states is you can do carve-outs. So in the same way that like states that like restrict abortions might have carve-outs for things like rape or medical exceptionalism, in a decriminalized state you can have similar policy carve-outs, right? So for example, if there is decent suspicion from the doctor that a woman is intentionally getting pregnant with the
That's because it's like we're just describing a particular fact about pregnancies, but I don't really see where we're clashing with the moral stuff. Yeah, it's stupid.
sheer goal of killing the baby right before it's born, I would want that woman investigated. She sounds like a crazy person.
So-
The
so-
issue is
so-
that that's
so-
not dominantly happening. And in Canada, in one
Hold on,
case where
that's a
that
little
was
different from what you
happening,
said earlier.
she was investigated
just,
and put in jail.
Just to be clear, Kyla, it just sounds like you said something different. You're saying if somebody has an intention to have an
right.
later abortion, that seems by some standard of this doctor, this theoretical doctor, to be insufficient in your view, then that should be an illegal abortion.
There can be carve-outs for essentially where mens rea is perceived from a woman, where the only goal of the abortion is the
So
harm of the
some abortions should be illegal under your system.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, that's different than what you said a couple minutes ago.
No, decriminalization can include legal carve-outs.
So
Just the way that
decriminalization can,
restrictive
so just to be clear,
include legal carve-outs.
decriminalization of abortion,
So stupid.
in your view, can include some criminalization of some abortions.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. So what would be the abortions that should be illegal in your view?
The moment that mens rea can be established and investigated, should be done.
So should every later term abortion be investigated to determine mens rea?
No, because I don't think most of those laters would satisfy mens rea. For example, if the
But
doctor
how would we
strongly-
know if they weren't
Hold on,
investigated?
if I can just finish. If you want to ask me, you gotta let me finish. So if a doctor can establish a suspicion of mens rea, in the same way that a doctor might establish mens rea of like childhood abuse with injuries coming in, I think doctors are trained to do this, and I think that fundamentally the bar would be quite high. But I would actually prefer an instance where like 1,000 people who have malicious intent go basically skate by than one innocent woman woman gets put in
But
jail.
if the abortionist was, the doctor was an abortionist who was incentivized to make money off of abortions, he's always going to say the mens rea is something that's favorable according to your legal code. How could you prevent that from happening?
So in Canada, we have a universal healthcare, so there isn't a financial incentive.
How could you prevent that from happening in the US since we're talking about the United States?
Then you would have mens rea to establish for doctors.
But
Thank you for that. The time for this first segment is up. Now Kyla will have the
I cannot believe. I cannot, like, I don't think Destiny did well in his debate, but at least they didn't get hung up on shit like this, on when does ensoulment happen, and whether or not we should have decriminalization and certain carve-outs for it, and what the exact
opportunity
rules of that would be. Although Destiny did bring up entailments that he believed Lila would have to accept if abortion truly was equivalent to murder, about, like, investigating certain late-term abortions or whatever, or investigating miscarriages as well. But
to cross-examine Lila. You may begin.
You're feisty.
I love it, Kyla. You too.
great.
You too, girl.
Just so it's clear, this is a fantastic debate.
Thank you
I was
for
very
coming.
excited to
I
talk
very
to
much appreciate you
Lila
being here, and
Rose.
I'm very happy to have it.
perfectly true to my description, but eugenics is strongly associated with determining value of a human or organism in the analogy based on scientific understanding of their biology. I mean, strongly associated with is a little silly. Usually, like, eugenics is someone trying to, like, weighing the human population in such a way to establish, like, a sort of master race or whatever. But you could say the sort of evidence they rely on in some cases can be, like, biologically or scientific understanding of someone's biology. But I think that's a little silly.
Okay, you're gonna have to flip through like 9,000
And I can report to you the 5 parts of the brain: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, the brainstem, the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland.
No.
No.
It's
Wow.
the mesencephalon, telencephalon, diencephalon.
Well, maybe there's different standards then for how we're defining 5 parts of the brain.
So my background's in neuropsychology, which is why I'm saying, like, if there's
Beautiful.
terms you don't know, that's fine. Like, I don't expect, like, I don't know anything about cars. So when somebody says a piston,
you
I'm like, I don't know
can't
what-
identify 5 key parts of the brain that way. So
Hey, you guys start my time. I'm not cross-examining her yet. She's cross-examining me still.
Based. This is just the AI eugenics ideology served to reinforce existing clash and racial prejudices using the veneer of science to justify policy. Yeah, I literally. What is that? That's what I said. If your definition of eugenics, is just saying that like I think obviously, so eugenics, like I said, as I originally said, like there's some element to it that's like trying to establish or like control populations to establish like some like master race or stuff like that. You can say the type of evidence they use is usually like, flawed understandings of the scientific understanding of their biology. It doesn't follow from that anything that has some scientific understanding of biology is close to eugenics. I think that is totally unfair to say. Like, no, just because they're using the same types of evidence in some cases, that like does not mean that's close to eugenics, because the more fundamental component of eugenics is trying to create some master race, some view of society that you want based on biology or whatever.
Let me. I'll let you just stop.
Yeah, sorry, let me
you go.
focus.
Take your time.
Got him. Okay. Okay. Did you want to finish your thought super quick?
No,
Should we
you
do that in
your
open?
time. Your
Yeah,
time.
okay.
We've got
Sorry.
30 minutes
God.
discussion.
You guys are so
We've got
good
30 minutes
time, too.
discussion.
You guys are great. Okay. So again, this is not esoteric gotcha, because I really want to be clear. I'm not trying to dunk on you because you don't know words. That's stupid. If I say a word that you don't understand, just ask me, because
I appreciate that. Thank you, Kyla.
So do you know what I mean when I ask what your epistemic justification is for your beliefs? I'm assuming you do.
Define that for me.
Okay, so epistemic justification would essentially be like, why do you believe such a thing? What's
Sure.
the actual through line reason? Typically down to your foundational axiom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
so,
I did present that. I don't know if that was, what you didn't respond to everything that I said. Obviously, you did respond to some of it. But do you want me to present it again? How I see that? I basically, in my view, just to use your language of personhood specifically, if you are a biological living human, you are a person. And in so many, you don't know when the child in the womb is ensouled. We have in the
The thing that actually matters, the permission you're trying to smuggle in, we said it.
We don't know
Yay.
exactly when ensoulment happens. The church does not take a stance on that.
True.
But ensoulment.
Rose
Thank you,
mad,
Michael.
playful face emoji, JK
Oh, we got
JK
clear,
type for
I
the
know.
lively response.
I appreciate it, Michael. The lively response is because I think it's so silly to say, because like the same types of evidence are used in 2 cases that they are dangerously close to each other or whatever. But yeah.
Doesn't equal and because we don't know exactly when ensoulment happens, by the way, is yet another reason to be very respectful of human life, because we just don't know. But the church has always taught, if you want to talk from a religious standpoint, to protect life from the moment of fertilization. And practically speaking, we should protect life from the moment of fertilization because we know we have a biological living human at that point.
So you think that our morality should come from biology?
I think that gives us clear evidence of where human life begins, and then from there you can build the position of we should be protecting all human lives because they are all persons. There's basically no human life. There's no individual human life that's not a person in my stance.
So the issue that I have is you have to pick one or the other. It's either biology or morality.
That's not true. That's not how that works.
That's how axioms work.
But biology presents facts that we can build a case for personhood upon.
So biology.
I'm gonna game at myself. Okay, bro. Okay, first of all, okay. I actually don't think the fertilization point, I think, probably is still an issue for Lila, actually, even with ensoulment, because, like, if you believe in souls at the moment of fertilization or whatever, there'd be weird issues with regards to twinning, like what happens to the souls when someone twins. Maybe there are some theological responses to that, but, you know, I don't know. I don't know what that'd be, but that's also...
equal, we get into religion. And basically, in my view, just to use your language of person, child and the womb is ensouled. We have
I don't really, I don't know if Kyla understands what she's saying. Oh, thanks for the 5 gifted memberships. Congratulations, I appreciate it. Hell fucking yeah. Let's go, goated. I was thinking maybe you could try to do an attack of a view about this human speciesism by using NTT arguments. Yeah, I mean, that probably works. I mean, that's essentially kind of what, I mean, I think that's what a lot of smarter people try to do. It's just like, you know, if you take the view that being a unique human organism is the thing that makes you a person, wouldn't that entail that, you know, we can have a person of 2 minds, but only one organism? Are they one person? You know, and various issues with that. But
on that. True. But ensoulment,
if you could, we need a Moxie dialogue tree for that.
Religious perspective, because if we get into religion here, we don't know exactly when ensoulment happens. The church does not take a stand respectful of human life because we just don't know, like, from the moment of fertilization, because we know we have a biological living human at that point.
So you think that our morality should come from biology?
I think that gives us clear evidence of where human life begins, and then from there you can build the position of we should be protecting all human lives because they are all persons. There's basically no human life. There's no individual human life that's
like
not a person in my stance.
So the issue that I have is you have to pick one or the other. It's either biology or morality.
That's not true. That's not how that works.
That's how axioms work.
But biology presents facts that we can build a case for personhood upon.
So biology doesn't give us moral justifications, right?
You're exactly right, but I think you misunderstood.
I think, like, Lila technically is right there, but I guess I think that's not what like Erudite was asking for, fundamental axioms, fundamental epistemic justification or whatever, and this is not particularly responsive to that. Biology. Although I don't think it was fair. I don't think anything Lila claimed in her first response there indicated that she thought, you know, morality was reducible to science,
it doesn't give us morality
or biology.
Gives us reality, and then we can build morality on that. So biology tells us biology does tell us when human life begins.
Why do you believe that human life begins at conception specifically?
Why do I believe it? It's not a belief. That is a scientific fact.
It is a belief. Now you're switching the words, right? Because what you're doing is you're saying it's biology, but then you're actually ladening it with moral claims. So which is it biology or morality?
So let me just be very clear.
And betray, which is a more complex version of the argument from
It is my belief, my position, my worldview, my argument that if you are a human life, a human being, you are a person, you deserve legal protections, and you should have the right to life protected like any other human life.
So when it comes to epistemic beliefs, you have to pick one. So if your morality comes from biology,
correct, Kyla.
well, you could say my morality comes from God. That would be my foundational axiom. And I use science to inform certain things, but my morality, my justification comes from God. Where does yours come from?
My morality comes from a natural order that is ultimately created and designed by God. So God. And as I said in my last...
Wait, so what? So it is reducible to biology then, essentially. I don't know. Is natural order that is designed by God... First of all, I don't think it's substantially different from just saying it's defined by God. Or particularly, like, that is essentially reducible to biology. That is essentially reducible to biology then. You just happen to believe that the biology is designed in such a way by God to lead you to this stuff.
In the last moments of my speech, I believe that our human rights, our right to life. So why does a human have a right to life? Where does that come from? It's not my opinion. It's not yours. It's not the government gave it to me. Sure. We are given them by our creator, a God who we are made in his image and who endowed us with these fundamental rights. And they're given to all human lives, not just women, not just men, not just older people, not just younger people.
And I agree with you. But the issue that I would say is that biology means nothing to you then. It's an optically satisfying red herring because fundamentally your epistemic justification is biology does not inform your morality. Your faith does.
Biology is a acknowledgement of reality, and then your morality is a worldview that addresses that scientific reality. So the scientific reality of when life begins, you're right, isn't a moral debate in and of itself. It doesn't answer a moral question. The moral question then is, should all human lives have human rights? Are all human lives sacred? Are all human lives, do they have value? My position is yes to all of the above. We all have human rights. We're all sacred. We all have value by virtue of being human.
Bro, this is worse than the shit they talk about with Destiny, bro. I didn't expect it to be this bad. No, because she's a biological determinist. The biology has to exist, and then it's how many rights to give it. She just said. I mean, she's.
And the reason, and the way we ascertain if there's a biological human is.
She just clarified again that it is ultimately from God. Like it's reducible to inalienable rights given us by a creator.
Biology is a acknowledgement of reality, and then your morality is a worldview that addresses that scientific reality. So the scientific reality of when life begins, you're right, isn't a moral debate in and of itself.
And she's now simply using biology as, a description of reality or whatever to apply her morality to. When previously she did literally say it comes from a natural order. That natural order is just designed by God.
Morality
but okay.
is informed by God, which is fine. Mine is too.
I think we're saying the same thing in different ways. I think. Well, you can decide that. But
I don't think Lila knows what she's saying. I don't know if Erudite is interpreting it correctly either. I don't know, bro. This seems.
I agree. The bottom line is our epistemic justifications are the same. I don't pretend that science is my morality. I say it's
I'm not
God.
saying science is my reality either, Kyla.
You are, because you're saying it's biology. So it's God. So
my position, because you could come in here and acknowledge the science alongside me, right? Just like Peter Singer, who's pro-abortion, and say it is scientifically the reality of a new, unique human being at the moment of fertilization. And then you can morally argue a different case because you have a different position, and you could say, well, it doesn't matter. And this is what Peter Singer says. He's very honest. He says it doesn't matter that it's a human being. The mother has the right to end the life, and that is not the same value of a life outside of the womb.
The issue that you have is your position is just as scientifically backed as my position, right? Because
I disagree.
Because fundamentally our moral systems
I think your
are based
position
on
is
God.
far more arbitrary. Your science is far more arbitrary and murky than mine.
5 divisions of the brain and brainwaves are not arbitrary in any way.
There's not even a specific time when you can identify when that special ensoulment process happens. You have a period of 3 weeks. So at what point in the 3 weeks is it okay to kill and not kill?
Okay, we can move on. I understand the epistemic stuff, not your cup of tea, that's fine. So when you say that God is your foundation of your belief.
Arguably, I feel like using evidence to arrive at some I don't even want to say imperfect conclusion, but some range of options is probably less arbitrary than simply defining one point that you believe dictates ensoulment based on whatever stuff you read in the Bible is. But okay,
that special ensoulment process.
Cup of tea, that's fine. So when you say that God is your foundation of your belief, which it is mine as well, is that because of something your God says? Should everyone else be forced to live in accordance with that?
It's a good question, Kyla, and I think that yes, in a country that is going to be founded and going to have a just order, yes, I think we have to acknowledge that human beings are made in the image of God.
So how are you different from a Muslim activist trying to spread Sharia law?
Well, there's a lot of other world. Can you say that again?
How are you different from a Muslim activist trying to spread Sharia law?
I'm very different from that because
you want to use your religious predilections to inform what's secular and non-Christian.
Because I think we can reason together and say that regardless of your beliefs about divine revelation, like Muhammad receiving divine revelation from somebody who's an active faith, and there's a lot of Sharia law that's built in divine revelation. I think on a natural level, we can acknowledge that it's wrong to kill human beings.
No, she is appealing just to natural law outside of God again. Wait, I'm so confused. I feel like she's contradicted herself 3 different times. Because originally she said it comes from a natural order that was designed by God, and then she just went to, no, it just is God, but now she's back to, it's a natural order that we should all agree upon, even outside of your beliefs about the divinity of it. Bro.
I think we could reason together, even without any religious texts, we could reason together and say, yeah, it's wrong to kill human beings. And even before there was divine revelation, there have been cultures and societies that have prohibited murder. Mm-hmm. So you don't need divine revelation to prohibit murder, but I do think divine revelation helps cement the reality that human life is sacred. I mean, Jesus Christ didn't come into the world at 13 to 14 weeks when his brain was a certain level of development. He came into the world as a single cell embryo. And that, I think, is very important point right there about humanity.
Just to understand, you believe that essentially you do want to impose your religious predilections on secular people who don't agree with your faith whatsoever, in the same way Muslim activists would want to do
No, Kyla. So our country, this country that we live in, was founded on certain foundational human rights that were articulated as being given to us by a creator. Do you agree with this?
Yes, but if you go into the 14th Amendment,
so by that argument, the very fact that
Lila must have watched the American Moral Prospect debate. Oh no, she was really convinced by Ryan's.
We live in this country. You could say, well, it's just like being under Sharia law because we live in America and we have endowed by a creator. I would argue they're totally different because Sharia law, well, it may include some elements.
What's wrong with non-religious natural order? Well, one, I don't believe or haven't heard a particularly coherent way that you can cross the sort of is-ought gap there. Like, it's hard for me to see a way that you can sort of derive what we ought do based on, our interpretation of the natural world. But secondly, I don't, beyond that, I'm not sure there is a, problem of just believing in it or whatever. I'm just saying Lila has seemingly contradicted a seemingly contradicted herself on where her morality comes from several times by saying it comes from a natural order that was made by God, and then saying, well, no, this comes from God, and then saying, well, no, even if we didn't have God, we could reason about natural facts. Claiming a natural order is an is, not an ought, but you're prescribing what people ought do based on the natural order, right? Like you can describe what the natural order is. From there, it's hard to derive some like authority about like what we ought do, unless your definition of morality is just useless and is not actually prescribing what people ought do. But at that point, like I said, that's just a totally useless definition of morality. There'd be like no way for you to claim what people ought do without the natural law thing. DM from Moxie. If moral facts in a relevant sense are metaphysically grounded in God's design, natural functions or ends, if something has a nature with certain central powers or abilities, then there are ways of living that fit the ways of living that fit that nature and ways to go against it. The moral facts are truths about what she fits and what violates that nature. God in this picture is the author of the nature, so grounding is ultimately divine design. Well, yeah, that's what yeah. So basically the view is she's sneaking in our 1, metaphysical realism about essences, and 2, natural theology, and 3, God is a designer. Yeah. Although, I mean, at least Erudite agrees that with the third one, God is a designer or whatever. But
that mirror some elements of natural law, and Christianity also includes levels of their own divine revelation that I think are highly anti to the human person.
Just to take my time back, just because I have limited time. Yeah. Essentially, you're saying, well, yes, but Christianity is better than Islam, so that's why I can impose my religious predilections on others, but Muslims can't impose theirs on others.
Do you believe that we have any human rights given to us by our Creator, not by the state?
Well, both. Our state also confers us human rights, separate of our Creator, and our Creator also confers us rights.
But are the state's rights completely arbitrary, or should they mirror what the
No, they're societally arranged and organized together. Right?
But what's that based on?
Population vote, typically, in a democracy.
So your rule of law would be pure democracy, not based on any foundational principles, just whatever the will of the people is.
Well, there's a lot of foundation. Well, this is like saying secular people can't have moral foundational. They can, right?
But you need to align on certain key moral foundations to have a society.
We often do. This is why we work really well in a secular democracy, despite the fact that many people are religious and not. We mostly work well together. Although, to be fair, in 2025, it's looking like we're getting along worse and worse. But by and large, we can agree with a lot of moral principles. Can I kind of shift to asking you
we'll pick
one more
question?
Later, yeah. Okay. If you have a burning building and you can save the occupants in one room, I know you love this one.
I love this one.
One room
oh my God.
has a baby born 2 weeks ago, and the other has a morula. And for those not familiar, that's just a fertilized egg, basically as late as it gets before it becomes like a blastocyst. So it's had about 4 cell divisions. Which one are you saving?
I would absolutely try to save both. I know I can't. It's like,
bro, really?
It's really like asking me if you have your son in one room and your other son in the other, who do you save? And it sucks, right? Because they're both equal in dignity, and I don't know what I don't know what I would do in that emergency situation. But what I would do in that emergency situation doesn't mean that one son is less valuable than the other, or the embryo is less valuable than the baby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, this is the issue.
This is why this is kind of
it's not silly.
In some ways, a useless hypothetical. I appreciate it.
I mean, it should imply, like, if it's the case that you have, 5 human embryos and 1 born person or whatever, it should, I think you could say both might have some fundamental right to life designed by their creator or whatever, but if you hold that it would be preferable to save the 1 born person or whatever, that should imply that the 5 embryos sort of lack the same moral value, even if you still hold that they have some fundamental right to life outside of that.
Well, your answer probably wouldn't be, I stand there stunned and don't pick, right? You would probably do something. Of course. What would you do? Would you save the baby or the morula? Because I know, no matter what I think, I'm saving the baby.
Thank you. The cross-examination period is over.
I tried
Incredible.
Really. Whatever one's closest to me. I mean,
you can't answer hypotheticals.
Thank you.
I know, it's a toughie.
Next, we will be transitioning.
But you shouldn't kill either one, is the bottom line.
Next, we will be transitioning. Wow. Lila and Kyla, you will both now have the opportunity to have an uninterrupted, open discussion where you may continue your conversation. You may begin.
Gotcha. So when baby and morula are in separate rooms, you stand there stun locked and save nobody. That's your answer.
No. I would start running around and trying to save whoever.
You can't save both. That's not how hypotheticals work, right? And just before you all laugh and be like, this is so silly, let me explain to everyone why philosophical hypotheticals are really, really important, right?
Kyla, let me ask.
This is a conversation we're getting bogged in now. Yeah, like, I don't know. Maybe Nightbot or Botrix has YouTube moderation turned on, and I just have not noticed it. It really should not be doing that. By the way, is KickChat still working? It should be, but I'm just curious. Oh, fuck. I can't open it. I can't send a message in this window. Hold on. I just want to check if I fixed that real quick. Yeah, okay. Believe I fixed the KickChat issue. Hopefully, going forward. We'll see.
Hold on. It's a good example.
Kyla, I agree that hypotheticals are important. So let me ask you this, because this is what you're asking me effectively, right? Let's say you have 2 hypothetical children. You and your husband have 2 hypothetical children. One is a little older than the other, of course. They're not twins. You have to pick one. Who do you pick? Who do you pick?
My answer would probably be if one's a morula and one's
they're both born, Kyla. Who would you pick?
I have 2 born children. I would probably end up, unfortunately, picking the one I happen to like the most, which is tragic. It's awful. Well, before you laugh, hold on. Before you laugh. Wait. Too proud. Too proud.
So wait,
right
so then
now.
the next answer
Hold on. You guys got to pause. We've got 30 minutes.
So then the next,
1 second. The crowd's answer right now is to be stun locked and let both die, and that's not
no,
real.
I wouldn't let both die.
That's
I would
not
run
real.
to pick whoever was physically
The one
closest
on
to
the
me.
right.
That's what I would do.
That might be an answer.
Yeah. So, but the bottom line is those scenarios, as much as I appreciate them, as fun as they are, we've done a lot of content around them. They don't tell you which one should have legal rights versus which one shouldn't.
They do. Because
because in that scenario with your 2 kids, because you might like one or be closer to one versus the other in the moment of the decision,
that's a utilitarian argument. You go,
should
when
one
I
have legal rights versus the other?
Yeah, that's a utilitarian argument. When I have to choose between 2 horrific tragedies.
Wait, what?
I do what's most
In that scenario with your 2 kids, because you might like one or be closer to one versus the other in the moment of the decision,
that's a utilitarian argument. You go,
should
when
one
I
have legal rights versus the other?
Yeah, that's a utilitarian argument. When I have to choose
How is that a utilitarian argument? I'm confused. I don't.
between 2 horrific tragedies, I do what's most efficient and increases the probability of that
Sophie's
child's life
choice.
surviving. That's what I do. That's a good answer. And it has.
But does that mean one of your kids
Doesn't
should not
even-
have the legal rights?
I don't even know why Erudite went with one embryo or one fucking blastoid or whatever it was called versus one living or like born person. I don't know why she wouldn't go with at least 2 embryos to make it more damning, but
Life and should be killed via.
So if a memorialist
and obviously more like the analogous example to that would have to be 2 for Lila, what she just asked, would you rather save one of your own children or another one of your own children? I know it's a movie, actually I haven't seen it, so I don't know the reference, but the analogous example would be, would you rather save 2 of your own children versus one of your own children? And I think most people have the intuition that you should save 2 of your own children.
and the baby's further away. You're saving the single cell organism.
I would try to save both. I would probably
can't
run.
answer. I would
Honestly,
try to
if
save
the
both.
baby's crying, I'd probably run to the baby first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone saves.
But it doesn't mean
Wow.
I think it's okay to kill the embryo.
I didn't say that you did. This is
okay,
why abortion conversations are hard. It is a choice between tragedies. It's not like everyone's like, God, it's so fun killing Morilas. Nobody's saying that. The issue that I'm trying to pose is, what if it's 2 Morilas that are closer to you?
Yeah.
What if it's 15? How many Morilas need to exist in the one room before you opt to save them over the baby?
Yeah.
That's the important
you could
question.
also say, to go around this line of hypothetical, you could say as an example, okay, you can kill 1,000, you can save 1,000 children over in India, right? If you shoot this 1-year-old, what do you choose to do?
You always shoot the 1-year-old and save 1,000 people. Always.
I would
Every
never
single
know.
every
My goat.
single time.
No,
because
you do not commit an evil act in order that a good act.
So you just abstain.
Maybe I'm wrong, okay? Maybe Lila does actually hold that it would be impermissible to kill a 99-year-old man to prevent another Holocaust. Like, what are we doing here, bro? Okay.
And then everyone dies?
No, well, in this scenario, you would be the one actively shooting the.
Wait, so if I choose to do nothing, nobody dies?
No, if you choose to not
if
shoot
nobody
the
dies if I do
1-year-old
nothing, yeah, I'm
in
gonna
this
not shoot someone.
Anyways, the point of this is,
yes,
I
that's what I
think we could go on. I'm actually really curious about your worldview because you were asking about mine earlier, and
Well,
we
you
were
haven't
discussing.
finished answering my questions about the Morial.
Well, and we were
You're running
discussing.
from
Well,
it.
I think we could just keep going in circles on it, which I'm happy to, but I think we're going to keep going in
We
circles.
don't.
Oh, hang on. It's a good stance to be based moral position on what most people's moral intuitions call for. I don't believe that you should base your morality solely on what most people's moral intuitions call for. I do, however, believe that like moral intuition can be sort of it could be used in reductios. I believe your intuition it should affect your view on like how permissible a moral system is if it would lead to like X outcome, and there's like some overwhelming moral intuition that outcome is like negative or whatever, right? Or maybe you think we should attack CEOs. I feel like view obviously does not entail that at all. What you bring up, but okay.
Right?
So,
if a certain moral view holds that you should do some, outcome, like you should like morally ought to like commit another Holocaust or something, you should discount that view based on it leading to a highly unintuitive outcome, right? Obviously. That's not holding to like some collectivist theory of moral relativity. But as most people's moral intuitions fawn, no, that's not. So again, I'm not claiming that like your view should be what is moral is like what is moral is what is in accordance with most people's moral intuitions. I'm simply saying you should discount a moral theory or whatever if it leads to like highly unintuitive conclusions. Like obviously that is something that you should consider.
the thing. Every hypothetical you pose me, I will just answer it because I think about these things. And these hypotheticals, to those who are not here, the purpose of philosophical hypotheticals is to test your moral principles. That's what it's for.
Thank you, Kyla.
Just
So
accept
there are
the warning and move on instead of fighting. It's not an uphill battle. Literally everyone accepts this fight. It's not like, I don't want to say literally everyone. Essentially everyone, including philosophers, like dedicated philosophers, accept the view that like you should absolutely consider like an entailment of something that's highly unintuitive to be like a point against your moral theory, right? Like it is highly unintuitive. For example, Michael, I'm pretty sure you have given this to me before, Michael, where you would say things like, Nonfon, your utilitarian system implies that this unacceptable outcome is permissible, that the utility monster, is permissible, that the organ transplant hypothetical, it would be permissible to kill the one person. Like you should discount theories based on them leading to unintuitive results to the extent that you think that intuition can be validified instead of like purely an evolutionary thing, right? Because you should also discount your intuitions in cases where it's clear that they could have some like social, cultural, or evolutionary thing behind them. I've never relied on the no one is relying on the everyone thinks this way argument. What do you mean? You were appealing to intuitions, right? Now, obviously, most people will have similar moral intuitions for most things or whatever. I'm not holding again to anywhere close to the position that what is permissible has to do with what most people's intuitions are. I'm simply saying you should discount theories based on how unintuitive the results are. That seems entirely.
Two moralists. If there are two moralists,
Let's
I'm
go
actually
for
seriously
moralists.
asking,
That's fine.
how many moralists need to be in the closer room before you pick them over the baby? Is it infinity? Because for me, it's infinity. I'm always picking the baby. But if you now have a 15-week developed child, God, I don't know. I'm probably going to pick the 15-week.
I mean, you could do the same scenario with a toddler in one room and a newborn in the other, right?
Oh.
God, I don't know. I might go.
By the way, it probably shouldn't be infinite because you should, even if you discount like future generations, quite obviously, like if you assume that people are we're not moving in circles, like regardless. Okay. Even if you just discount like future lives or whatever, there probably would be a point at which some amount of future lives, regardless of whether they're individual organisms or just like hypothetical, your action will cause some couples to have more sex and lead to more future lives. Like if you think that's a good thing, even if you discount it, quite obviously, you should have some consideration for future people as well. But okay.
I'm probably going to pick the 15.
I mean, you could do the same scenario with a toddler in one room and a newborn in the other, right? Or you could do 10 newborns in one room and 5. We could do endless scenarios. I think at the end of the day, especially in an emergency situation, who someone picks in an emergency situation doesn't.
What is this?
I don't even know who that fucking guy is, but he gets a sub. Mamdani has benefited from the activist networks funds with tens of millions of dollars by Soros, Ford Foundation networks. Yeah, but that's not like surprising.
Okay, is that I was just supposed to look at him looking at that picture?
Change the legal rights of who wasn't picked.
Sure,
So
but
I think
the issue is that this.
You have 8 viewers plus 8 plus likes on YouTube. That's a solid metric space. It would have been more if I hadn't been so lazy and I was streaming the last 4 or 5 days or whatever. God, I need to edit shit. Regardless, make sure to smash that like button on YouTube and that sub button and share.
No, that's not
That's where these scenarios, I think, are not very useful to the question of should abortion be
in
legal
an
or
emergency
not.
situation, we don't garner moral constitutions at all to anybody because it's an emergency situation.
Here's the
In a
question, like the
hypothetical,
Titanic, right?
it does
Men and women-
Instead, you were playing Worms and
Men and-
WMD. Only for a little bit. A lot of it was me. I did read stuff on my own time, like I do a lot. Some of it was me doing schoolwork, but a lot of it was me saying I'm not going to stream today. I'm going to edit today, and then I did not end up editing or streaming.
Children first, right? The Titanic, men and children first, or children and women first.
I was gonna say, definitely not the men.
Not
I think it's
men.
just children and women.
Not even Jack. So in that case, the women and the children were supposed to be first, right? Does that mean that men should have less legal rights than women and children?
This isn't about legal rights. This is about morality. And
Okay, well, I've been talking about legal rights. And I
if we want to talk about
too.
legal rights, we can. But the
So wait,
issue
do
is
men
that
not
we're
have-
I'm not. I don't think they ever explicitly shifted to legal rights. They were talking about morality, and Kyla was asking for where does your epistemic justification or whatever come from. I don't believe they ever got off morality after that point. When did she start talking about legal rights? She was talking about natural law 5 minutes ago. Why are we talking about legal rights now? What are we doing?
Men not have the same moral value as children.
When you say I'll see you tomorrow, or when you end stream, is that an ongoing joke or an aspirational sentiment you never meet? I mean, usually I say I'll see you tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, right? I feel like I'm good. I do that now. Sometimes it's it's not necessarily meant to be an ongoing joke, but it's obviously become somewhat of a ongoing joke. Although I feel like a lot of times I'm better at saying tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but then it's never the day after tomorrow either, is it? But
and women.
No, in that situation, what we say is that there is something noble tied to masculinity that is tied to
looked around U.S. stats,
right,
most abortions around 93% are done before 15. Yeah, I'm broadly familiar with those stats. Most abortions are before most sort of reasonable cutoff dates.
Sure,
so, but
that's not a legal determination.
But the point is that it goes back to my point, though, because who you would save in an emergency situation has a lot of times.
Have you seen that new X location feature? No, I have not.
Do with your relationships to that person,
of course,
maybe your own, immediate snap decisions based on traumas or experiences you've had in the past, but that doesn't determine the moral value and certainly not the legal rights of the people involved in these endless scenarios. Can you agree with that?
So again, when we're using,
but can you agree with that, Kyla?
Moral rights are very different than legal rights.
Let's just do moral rights. Then you're
Kill me.
You're hung up on legal. Can we just do moral rights?
They turned it off.
And so,
That's
okay,
it.
but then, so if men have the same moral value as women and children, but you would pick the woman, or the Titanic, says women and children first.
That's why my follow-up question is really important. Because if I have to choose between 5,000 men dying or one woman, I'm picking the men. Okay. This is why I'm asking you with the Mori law. I understand why you're stunlocked between the Mori law and the baby when they're equal. And you said distance would be the varying factor for me. That's a really good answer. That's better than my answer, right? Now the next question is, how many Mori laws need to be in the closer room before you opt to select it over the child? And this question matters. Yeah, because the reality is when we look at single-cell organisms, we all understand that
incredible.
we value it less in tragic situations.
Let me give you an answer you might like. And then can we go to worldview, because I'm very curious about yours.
Sure.
Here's an answer you might like. If it's in the case of children that are frozen, right? They're basically frozen in time effectively via IVF.
Nope.
Why?
They're not. In this hypothetical, they're not.
Well, then they would be dead already.
This hypothetical is a magical world where the Mori laws are living, and if you save them, they will become children. That's how hypotheticals work.
Okay,
Sorry.
All right, then if that's the case, then you could make a very strong argument of children that are frozen. I'm very curious about yours.
Sure.
Here's an answer you might like. If it's in the case of children that are frozen, right? They're basically frozen in time effectively via IVF.
Nope.
Why?
They're not. In this hypothetical, they're not.
Well, then they would be dead already.
This hypothetical is a magical world where the Mori laws are living, and if you save them, they will become children.
I was just saying frozen people they're not a unique human organism because they're frozen? Fond of Gratus and I were in a temporary unconscious state, e.g. Benzo, Peterson, and Russia. Which one would you save in the fire? I don't know, probably whichever one of you was younger.
Children that are frozen, right? They're basically frozen in time effectively via IVF.
Nope.
Why?
They're not. In this hypothetical, they're not.
Well, then they would be dead already.
This hypothetical is a magical world where the Mori laws are living, and if you save them, they will become children. That's how hypotheticals work.
Okay,
Sorry.
all right, then if that's...
Oh, she should never said that. Now I'm on Lila's side, okay? In the hypothetical world where they become children, assuming they live, good lives or whatever, then, even if you only have two, I'd probably, I would probably save the two immortalize whatever the fuck over the one living person, but that relies on a lot more controversial views than most people's.
That's the case, then you could make a very strong argument to absolutely save the 1,000 versus the one in the older child in the other room. You could make that case very easily because in the case of the IVF clinic burning, or there's a bunch of babies that are frozen, created via IVF, and they're in a freezer, and you could grab the freezer or grab the
newborn baby. So if the baby's frozen, it's not worth as much morally?
Well, no, it's more that you don't if you take someone out of a clinical setting where, by the way, that's why one of the many reasons I oppose IVF, because it's against the human rights of the baby to be frozen like that. But they're in a hostile environment. They're
True.
not going to survive without intervention, right? Because they're.
Well, how do we? What? How is that self-evident? How do we arrive at the self-evident principle from facts about the natural world that is against human rights to freeze an embryo? Really? What? How do we get there? Should parents be prosecuted for paying for the freezing service? I mean, I don't think she holds that there should be any criminal prosecution. I'm pretty sure she said that before. But do you think we can have welfare and mass immigration? I mean, it just depends on the scope of the welfare state, really. I would agree, you cannot have all welfare benefits that are given to natives to be given to non-citizens. But I think certainly you should. There should probably be some absolute bare minimum welfare that's given to non-citizens. In the form of medical care, forcing ERs to treat immigrants who are undocumented or whatever, non-citizens who don't have the money to pay for it themselves. But regardless,
they're taken out of the place. They're taken out of the place they should be, which is their mother's womb, right? And that's where they should be naturally developing. Now they're frozen in time. So you can make the case that you know for sure, and a lot of the time when you unfreeze the babies, they die, et cetera, et cetera. It's very horrible. So you can make the case, well, I know for sure I can save this baby, but who knows? These other babies might be already unfrozen by this point because of the IVF clinic is in damage, or there's a fire going on, or whatever.
Sure.
It is. So,
yeah, what you're talking about is what I would label assumed potential, right? So, one of the reasons that you're picking the baby is because there's an assumed potential here, where we basically treat the potential so real that we act like it is real, right? This is why most people would agree that when third trimester,
it's not about potential as much as it is
differently than when first trimester, like when my miscarriage happened.
I mean, like, why would I not value the potential on it? Like, you know, I don't think that the potential is what grants someone the prospect of or like the value of personhood or whatever, right? I don't think, you know, because you have the potential to one day be sentient or whatever, that you then have a claim to personhood or whatever. But why would I not value the potential as well?
And it's different than when my friend lost her baby at like 30, like I think it was 28 weeks. Everyone looks at that and they understand that both are tragic. And this is why abortion topics are so hard. Both options are tragic. I am not dismissing that at all. But that's not how we inform legality or morality.
Let's talk more about your view of how morality and legality should be informed.
Sure.
So you said earlier during the cross-examination that I started with was really interesting. You said we support decriminalization totally, but then there's some criminalization that you support in the later term. I'm assuming it's after ensoulment happens, right? And your view of ensoulment, by the way.
12 to 15 weeks.
Sorry guys, my mic is coming off here. I know that's going to not be good for later. Let me try to
you waited for me to find my papers.
Back on here. Take your time. Okay, so I really want to understand this because you were telling me basically, Lila, your view is like Sharia law, you know, because you think human beings are made in God's image and have the right
not
to
like
life.
Sharia law. I think your principles are being like a Sharia law activist.
All right, I'm like a Sharia law activist. Okay. So I'm curious then, where do you think human rights come from? Because I think they come from God.
Are you talking about, so again, we're doing this equivocation stuff. When you say human rights, are you talking about the moral?
I'm talking about the human right to life that I think also should be protected by law.
So if you're talking about human moral value.
I'm talking about human moral value, yes, but whether you have...
That's from God.
Regardless of how much moral value you assign to any given human, I'm talking about what I would consider a universal human right that is given to us by God. And
so
let's just say for a minute...
If you equivocate, I can't answer your questions well. Do you mean legal, or are you talking about my moral epistemic?
How about you tell me that it has so much potential, and now I'm here at 40 watching Fonman stream, so maybe she's not wrong yet? Well, why is she even wrong currently? Is that not literally living up to your greatest potential? What the hell?
I'm talking about a human right that yes, one of the consequences of it being a human right is that if you live in any given society, it is incumbent upon the government to develop law to protect that human right.
I don't even know if does Lila even have a clear view about what rights are? She's not giving me the impression that she does, but okay.
Right, within the reason of what a government can and should do.
Oh, okay, I'll do my best to entertain. Usually you need to pick one, but it sounds like you want to do legality. We can just do legality.
Sure, okay. But my question is the same. It's that where do you think that these rights come from? Whether you consider them moral or legal rights.
Come from fiat, typically, is how we would view. So the reason that a bunch of wonderful...
But who's fiat, Kyla?
The states.
Okay, so we totally disagree on that.
So you don't think that enforcement of our rights... If somebody comes and they steal my water bottle, which I know you guys are very covetous of it, hey, leave it alone. Who do I call? Right, I call the cops, right? And the cops are granted the authority by my state, which I grant authority through my vote to do the law, and they'll come and they'll beat you up and give me my water bottle back.
Do you think it's possible for the state to fail to enforce a right that they should be enforcing?
Of course.
Okay, who decides that? How is that to be decided?
I don't even... Kyla literally said, like, let's do legality. And then Kyla, you know, Lila was like, okay, where do you think rights come from? And then Kyla, you know, she said, oh, you know, the state or whatever. We just totally disagree with that. No, you're still talking about different types of rights. She's still talking about, like, moral rights. Demer's joking. Do you think the... little me non-fond being a non-fond, or sorry, do you think so little me that being a non-fondler is meeting my potential? LMAO. Everyone is meeting the maximum of their potential by watching me. Clearly, that's self-evidently true to me. Oh my god.
Usually, the voting populace over time has a conversation.
Sorry, not oh my god, you. Oh my god of this conversation.
And is the voting populace
like we're doing now?
Is the voting populace when it's a majority vote, a very strong majority vote?
Is
it always right? Is it always right?
Why? Why are we doing you? Like. Lila has to know what the actual disagreement is here, right? She has to know that they're talking about different types of rights, right? There's no way that she, my God.
Nope.
Wow, and who decides when it's not right or right? Who decides whether it's right or wrong?
People like you and I are essential to this process, right? These conversations are what we do to, over time, guide and think.
But who decides wher the majority vote that is deciding which rights to be given or not, protected or not by any given population?
Against electoral college, but
who decides whether that majority is right or wrong?
So if, say for example, it gets challenged in court and it gets voted all the way up, it would go to the Supreme Court, right? We have
you're talking about legal government structures now. But let's just do for
cool. She's not even a utilitarian, apparently.
Let's just do a historical.
I don't know what. I mean, Erudite believes in God. She believes in whatever Christian morality. I think she would probably subscribe to some sort of, moderate deontological view, but
my hypothetical, Nazi Germany, right?
Okay. Well, that's an authoritarian state, so it's a little bit different because now you have an
Let's
authoritarian.
imagine, here's a hypothetical. Here's a hypothetical for you. There's a bunch of Nazis.
That was
and
a
they are
silly?
the
Oh, my
majority
bad.
in a country.
Yeah.
And they run the court system too, Kyla. It's a pretty dark space, right? And so they've decided by majority vote, and the Supreme Court has just voted, yeah, this is not the way, that certain groups are considered subhuman. They're not persons under the law. Maybe they don't even have souls and they're born. You know, who knows the arguments they may use for this. And so they say these people can be, you know, basically killed.
Yeah.
What, is that okay with you?
From time to time, the blood patriots must be shed to overturn tyrants. That's what I would say.
What are we doing? What are we doing, bro? How do we get here? How do we get to when are revolutions justified, bro?
Based on what standard, Kyla? What standard would these patriots have to go overturn those tyrants?
Well, that would be up to the population. So obviously,
But
as a Christian,
what does that even mean? Up to the population?
well, as
which
a Christian,
population?
I would the people in the state.
But what are they? What standard are they overturning the Nazis with?
It probably depends on the state. So in America, we would have probably a blend of utilitarianism, which is the most popular secular moral system, and Christianity. Those are the two most popular secular moral
is
systems.
your worldview? What do you think is the correct worldview? Though, is it some blend of utilitarian? So is in your view then is the correct view for a society to have a blend of Christianity and utilitarianism?
I think that church and state should be fully separated, and I think the electoral college democracy has been the best approximation for what God intends for us.
So do you believe that there are fundamental human rights that should
at
be
a moral
protected?
level, yes.
Are there fundamental human rights that should be protected?
Oh, now they're finally back into reality. Let's go. Let's say you change your views on transgenderism to be closer to the Republican position. Instead, your view on abortion was that it should be permitted until 12 weeks. Would Dem still accept you? Probably not most online Democrats or whatever, but I feel like if you were anti-Trump or whatever, there'd still be a place for you in the Democratic Party. I'm pretty sure Unfuck America would probably still accept you to some extent. I think they have on the website our only ask of you is you vote blue or whatever. You can have any position within that, but I think there are a lot of online Democrats that would sort of reject you at that point, but I don't know.
Protected at the legal level?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, and where do you get that standard for those rights from?
So again, the legal standard is unfortunately still going to come from.
But where do you get your preferred legal?
Mine-
Pretend Kyla's the ruler of the world.
You are
the
you're asking my epistemic
What do you-
justification. I'm a divine command theorist.
Okay.
And kind of blended. I'm a pluralist.
Why? No, what do we... Kill me. Whatever.
But a divine command theorist and a virtue ethicist, right? So where does it come from? Typically, it's going to be from exegesis, eisegesis, and divine revelation, and I blend that with what I think God's nature is and what He would most want for things. And for example, I want policy that reduces abortion, harm to children, harm to women, and harm to mothers. And right now, the data is unequivocal. I could go through the data from Texas. It's infant mortality up in the state of abortion.
I'd love to talk about that because
maternal
I think you're
mortality
totally misreading it.
up. Childhood
Let's talk about
poverty
that.
up.
But just to be clear,
11% increase in foster
let's get to that in a
cases.
minute. But just to be clear, so if you ruled the world, and this is the most just world possible, right? That
Sure.
you have to create. You are tasked with creating the most just world possible. Your standard for legal, but that's what we're arguing about here. That's what we came here to do because we're deciding whether abortion.
No,
should be
because I
legal or
separate
not.
so I understand.
We're
that-
deciding whether or not it should be okay to kill.
I understand that good legal law is always a compromise because when it comes to ethics and problems of reality,
True,
you
Michael.
often have
I should add
conflicting
that.
ethics.
Okay, well, but I totally disagree with
This
that.
is the Hobbes and
No, I
Locke
totally disagree
argument.
with that. That's not correct because if you have,
But you disagree
No,
with that?
I disagree because I don't think there needs to be a compromise. For example,
There's always a compromise.
No, because when it comes to that's not true. Actually.
That is true
No.
of all legal law. Good law. So Hobbes and Locke
No,
is a good
because
example of
there's
liberty
no law
versus security.
Kyla, come on. There's no law in the United States that says that it is your right as a woman to kill your newborn child.
You're right.
Okay, so there's no compromise there. There is a complete prohibition. You're saying laws are all compromises, so we should make compromises around abortion. There is a complete legal prohibition
I don't
on
know. Didn't we have to compromise with Peter Singer on that one?
killing born children. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
As a society,
And you're
we birth
arguing.
canal,
You're
we
arguing.
value that.
And you're
14th
arguing.
Amendment actually says all persons born.
And to be clear, you're arguing for a virtual, total protected right for mothers. And I say virtual because you have some little carve-outs for maybe some criminalization, which are a little murky.
Yeah, with mens
But
rea.
largely speaking, you have a complete your legal system. You want to protect the right of mothers to kill their unborn children. Is that correct?
I want to decriminalize it.
Okay,
That's not the, so this is, you're doing the equivocation thing again.
Not really, no, it's about
hold
whether
on.
you have the right to an abortion or not. That's what we're
rights are not
talking
the same
about.
thing as liberties. What you're talking about would be
The
essentially
liberty for an abortion or the right for an abortion. Either way, you can pick the language you prefer to use.
Well, the
So
language
it's legal
here,
abortion is what I'm
But
speaking
when we're
to.
talking about legality and morality, the language matters.
We're talking about
It matters
legality
a
right
lot.
now. We're talking about legality right now.
So
not morality.
especially legally, the language especially matters here.
Yes,
So
I
in the
agree.
case
So
of abortion, I do
you can
want the
pick-
liberty for it to be
yeah.
between the doctor and the woman because one, I
But
trust
Kyla,
our doctors to not
when you're
want to
queen
do
of the
harm.
world, Kyla. Okay, so you were saying, well, we need to make compromises because that's what the law does. So as queen of the world, Kyla, I need to make compromises to help weigh people's interests. There,
Yes,
as
the
I
best
said before,
outcomes.
there is no compromise right now in the U.S. legal system and in most
Wait,
legal systems
hold on,
actually,
just-
where it's ever there. As
the
I
best
said before,
outcomes.
there is no compromise
For
right
best
now in the U.S.
outcomes, how are we even a divine command theorist at that point? Unless God's divine command, which it is, absolutely. It's just maximize. It's just to maximize outcomes, but okay.
legal system and in most legal systems actually, where it's ever okay to kill born children. In your Kyla's perfect world, is it ever okay to kill a born child?
No.
Okay. So what is different between a newborn baby, including a very sick one, including one born to very poor parents, including one born that's going to go into the
Right,
foster
you don't
care
have to take
system, right?
liberties. How far do you have to zoom in on those details for that to make sense?
That
I
baby
don't know.
having legal
It's-
protection, why is that okay with you and not a baby weeks before?
Because I
The same
trust doctors to make the call for medical exemptions that are necessary.
Doesn't
right?
God
So
give
I've already
tips on
said
abortion in the
for carve-out,
Bible? I believe there's literally like only one passage in the Bible that mentions something approximating abortion. I don't think it literally gives tips on it. I think it just describes. I believe there's some description of it, but I actually don't even think it technically has a prescription in it.
we have somebody who we have all reason to believe
But
their mens
Kyla,
rea.
just to be clear,
Well, don't
just to be
interrupt me. You gotta let me answer, right?
Of course,
I'm
Right?
look
If
up my
we
goat
believe mens rea,
and
that
how
a
do you
woman is
spell his
intentionally killing her
last
baby,
name?
the fetus and the
Mackenzie?
child in her for exclusively the purpose of just killing it, just selectively, we can all agree, she's kind of free. I
McCallum.
don't want that protected, and there should be
What does the Bible say about abortion?
It never mentions it directly. At least we do have, there's talk about stillborn children, there's talk about miscarriages. We don't have a reference that I can identify, and I've been looking for quite some time, to the actual practice of abortion. Now, there are folks who will point to Numbers 5,
Right.
known as the Sotah, or the trial of bitter waters, as it gets characterized as instructions for carrying out an abortion or something like that. I tend not to agree with that reading for a handful of different reasons. To begin, this is something that's taking place against the will of the woman who may be pregnant, and I don't think it's helpful to appeal to the destruction of her own body, her reproductive system, and potentially a fetus against her will as a defense of abortion.
Can you spell out what Numbers 5 actually sort of says before we discuss
Yeah.
it? I
So
can
this-
read it out if you like, but it might be quite long.
So this is a ritual that is offered in Numbers 5. If a man suspects that his wife is unfaithful to him, but he has no evidence, what he can do is bring her to the temple and force her to go through this ritual known as the Sotah, or the trial of bitter waters. And it's kind of a what's known as an ordeal, which is where you leave it up to God to make the decision because you don't have the evidence. And so, if they, does a witch weigh more than a duck kind of thing? If you throw a witch in the river and if she drowns, it turns out she wasn't a witch. But if she lives, then she was, then you execute her. Like, this is where we can't really tell. We don't have the data. We don't have the means, so we're going to leave it up to God. And in this instance, there's a curse that is written out. And then you take a jug with some water, you throw some dirt from the temple floor in the jug, you scrape the ink from the curse into the water, stir it all together. The woman pronounces an oath. There's a heave offering that is done. She drinks the water. And this is kind of symbolically internalizing the curse.
Okay, so not accurately characterizes instructions, but a description of a ritual that would sometimes, lead to the death of the fetus, obviously.
legal carve-outs for that to be investigated, which Canada has.
But Kyla, did you know that there are some doctors, and there would be a lot more.
President of Tradeoffs, the government shouldn't confer rights or impose duties on anyone. HRT should be banned for minors, and adults should be free to do what they want. Is this beyond the pale? I mean, I think it's obviously a little extreme to say the government shouldn't confer rights or impose duties on anyone as a generality. But I don't think the actual position HRT should be banned for minors, and adults should be free to do what they want. It's like particularly. It's like super crazy. I mean, a full-on ban for minors is probably a little silly because there are probably some that it makes sense to give it to if you just have the proper gatekeepers involved as say who meets the criteria for getting it. But
if our country shifted this way, right? That believe that it is okay to let sick newborns die via neglect.
okay, easy money.
I
Thanks for following, Olo. Whoever.
would hope that those
it's a
doctors
bot,
are being
of course.
criminal-
anyway.
But what if the doctors in their best, because the doctor, when you're talking about these medically, needed abortions, it's often a baby that has a disability. Let's be real. It's a baby with a disability, a sick baby, okay? There's a lot of babies that are born that have disabilities and are sick, okay? So under your same standard, you could have that same doctor decide, okay, what's so special about the birth canal? This baby is still sick. This baby still has a disability. This baby's gonna be a burden on you, the mother. The mother's like, yeah, it's a big burden. Why would it be wrong to kill that sick or disabled baby after birth?
I think so this is one thing we'd probably agree on. I think aborting babies because they have Down syndrome or disability is wrong.
We're talking about those medically needed abortions in your view, because you're saying that the doctor knows what he's doing.
I don't think Down syndrome justifies a medical need.
Well, let's just say the baby's really sick. Let's just say there's a severe.
Isn't the usually? I don't know if that's usually the case for medical justification. I feel like it's usually because they, pose some threat to the life of the mother. Do you think that makes me transphobic? Not really. Easy money, no.
Disability. They have trisomy 13. They have some very sick.
There are probably cases where those like overlap. It's like because the fetus has some disability, it poses some increased risk to the mother when giving birth or something. But I don't know if that's not what people mean when they say like medical exceptions.
Situation, and so they're going to have that after birth too. If they have it after birth, if you would be okay with them killing him before birth, would you be okay with them killing with the same sickness after birth?
I think in this circumstance, good doctors and good parents with good mens rea, so they don't have a guilty mind, for those who don't know what mens rea is, would all want that child to live as long as it possibly can, assuming that like extreme egregious suffering isn't occurring, right? I would assume.
Well, let's say there is a 1-year-old that is suffering a lot. I mean, here's an example.
You should report it if you think the doctor and the mother are colluding together to kill it because they're like,
so let's go to suffering. And it sounds like that's the standard for your part of it. There's a family I know recently. Their little boy was diagnosed with brain cancer at age 3. Tons of suffering, excruciating suffering. He was suffering. Quality of life very poor. You could argue. You could argue. Would it be okay? And if they decided it's going to be better for him, better for us, better for everyone. The doctor's like, yeah, this is a terminal diagnosis here. Like the percentage of success rate of healing from this is like, it's like a miracle.
Well, this child has consciousness. So my answer very simply is like my system accounts for this, right? He has consciousness.
I was going to say, I don't think Erudite ever appeal to something where this would be like a reductio.
Oh, it doesn't. That's not true. Because
does he have consciousness?
No, because you're okay with later term
doesn't have consciousness?
You're okay with medically
I'm not okay with
later term abortions.
I think
because of suffering. So
no,
oh
hold
my
on.
God.
You're not okay with that.
No. So this is where hold on. Let me clarify. Because right now you strawman my position. And
I want to understand.
Well, you just said I'm okay with like just elective late term abortions. That is
no, we're not talking about elective. We're talking about ones that our doctors are saying these are medically necessary. The baby's suffering or the baby's disabled. That's what we're talking about right now.
Right, but the idea of saying you're okay with it is the same thing as me saying, oh, you think the child is a moral law? You're okay with killing moral laws. But that's not true. That's not true.
Well, then let's talk about.
You have to grant me the same level of grace that I'm granting your position.
All right,
if you, hold on, I'll just pause, just to get the idea out for everyone to hear. The issue that I'm taking right now is that you're saying, so you're okay with it if you make exemptions.
Let me remove that language. I understand that language.
That's like me saying, the moral law is fine to be killed because I killed the baby. That's not true.
We'll remove the language. When I say you're okay with it, I'm talking about your queen of the world Kyla legal system. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm talking about a legal right.
No, because okay is a moral
prescription. We'll remove the language. It sounds very triggering. We're going to remove the language for you and we're talking about legal right. Back to my friend.
It should be legal for the medical exemption to occur. That doesn't make it okay or good or awesome or that I love it.
Okay,
right?
I agree. So back to my scenario, which is a
quite obviously okay is going to make people assume morality instead of legality. That's usually what people are going to assume from
this
that.
young child was suffering immensely. Terminal
yeah, it's
diagnosis.
good that's the sentence to bring
Should
up.
the parents have the legal authority with a doctor, lovingly, they had love in their hearts, to give euthanasia to the child?
The child is consciousness, so no.
Okay, so then based on that standard, it sounds like you would also oppose medically needed abortions after 12 to 15 weeks.
So this is something.
Is that true?
Yeah, so your debate.
Is that true?
Yes, so your debate's updated my opinion on this. So
so just to be clear, I don't want to make
sure. Do you want me to flesh that out? Because it'll give you
Well, I just want to know if you support making it illegal to kill sick or disabled babies after 12 to 15 weeks.
There should be a carve-out for mens rea of intentionally trying to kill a baby exclusively on a discriminatory.
Well, no, they're trying to end the baby. I mean,
is it for discrimination because they're saying that because they're sick or disabled they're lesser than? Then yeah, that's
Kyla, come on, it's the same loving. Let's say theoretically, it's the same loving heart. Just Kyla, it's the same loving heart of like, oh, my baby's really sick. He's 5 years old and is about to die from cancer. Let's administer euthanasia. It's the same sentiment in the doctor and the parent's heart. Oh, my baby's really sick. They're 20 weeks old in utero, and this is
to Kyla's point, which she hasn't gotten to express yet. I think she's going to say it's the intention of essentially discriminating based on disability that makes it wrong. Like the mens rea is some discrimination, it's some hate crime against disabled people, but
I don't know how many times I can answer.
Look at our approach to this debate. I got trapped into arguing extreme and unrelevant positions where we'd already established a really good standard for controlling abortion. Why argue infanticide and near-birth abortion when it's not a standard people even think about? Well, they're trying to talk about stuff beyond that, and to be fair, they're not doing a very good job at doing so. Like they were for a while talking about the actual morality of it. Now they've moved on to some weird point about what legality should be based on their supposedly agreed upon framework of divine command. But or to be fair, Lila didn't say divine command. She said a natural order designed by God.
I know.
Should that be legal?
So again, if the baby has consciousness and the reason for killing is exclusively based on discrimination of able-bodied, no, I don't think we should discriminate to say, like,
what about discrimination?
Maybe we can kill every disabled person. Wait, no, that's
not discrimination. They're, like in my
it's
scenario,
discrimination if the reason you're killing it is because they're disabled. Yes, assuming they have consciousness, which I'm assuming they do.
To be clear,
it would be extremely messed up.
This is a medically. They would deem this medically necessary.
So that's why, if you let me finish granting you, this is what your debates and a debate with, I think,
I don't know if that's the case. I don't know how I would look that up exactly, but my understanding is at least usually when people say medically necessary abortion, they're not referring to just the fetus is disabled or whatever. They're referring to, there's some increased risk to the mother because of the pregnancy, because and that may sometimes align with the fetus having a disorder, but that's not the reason that they're medically necessary.
An OBGYN had. It updated me on going, oh, there's very few few good reasons for medical exemption. Very, very, I can imagine a world where maybe there's like one or two, but it sounds like it's actually incredibly rare, which is why I think basically all late-term and mid-term abortions would be de-recommended from the doctor because they would go, we actually do have the medical technology to keep you and baby alive.
But Kyla, the reality is most late-term abortions that are done, because I've investigated these late-term abortions.
That should be updated.
They say, oh, this is medically indicated. This is medically indicated.
I agree.
And just as an example, anecdotally, my nephew is missing his hand, right? Amniotic bands at 20 weeks. They found it on the anatomy
Okay,
stand.
Lila, do you think that I think that a doctor who recommends that child gets killed is good? Do you think that my world?
No. But I'm just saying the state of our legal system is that medically indicated abortions are being done constantly, and they're saying that these are needed for late-term abortions. So
Which is what I've updated.
But it sounds like you oppose these, and you think they should be illegal.
Yeah, they should be investigated. They should be carved out for mens rea.
But should they be illegal?
If there is murder based on discrimination of disability, yes.
What about suffering? What if they're suffering?
Incredible.
It's not the same thing as disability.
Okay, so
can I ask you about, since we have 4 minutes, can I ask you about your worldview and the legality of it?
But just can I ask one last question?
Yeah,
Make sure I'm landing it here. So just to be clear, you don't think any amount of suffering or disability justifies abortion, legal abortion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, that shouldn't be true either, but okay.
So
Let's talk about Texas if you want to do that route.
Sorry?
If you want to go.
You obviously, if there was some baby who would literally be the negative utility monster if they were born, then you should probably abort that baby. But regardless, okay. How do you feel knowing that every vector space has a basis requires the axiom of choice to prove? I don't know what you mean by that. What amount of suffering justifies suicide? I guess I don't exactly know what you mean by it justifies, but it would just be the point at which like the expected value of suicide would be positive. In the real world, you're always going to have like uncertainty around it, so there should always be a presumption against suicide, obviously, but
Go the Texas route. I'd love to talk about Texas.
No, I want to ask you about your legal system. So if you think that life begins at conception, are you essentially granting that God is killing anywhere from 30 to 70% of fetuses who don't implant?
No.
So what's happening?
I think that it's hard to know exactly the number of miscarriage rates.
Yeah,
Maybe it's 30%. I mean, 70 I think is a little high.
This is failure to implant, not miscarriage.
That is.
Okay, but the question is how you determine. Well, if your question is just how do we make utility comparisons, I mean, you just look at the evidence. You make inferences based on the evidence that we have available. You use your sense data to try your best to determine roughly how much suffering or value there is in someone's life or whatever. So quite obviously, most people would agree that for some 90-year-old man diagnosed with prostate cancer, which is going to give him going to bring him some incredible amount of discomfort, whether or not he goes through treatment. In that case, it's likely that the expected value of suicide in this case, really euthanasia, would be higher than the expected value of just letting him die a natural death. It's out of his hands, some incredible amount of pain and suffering along the way. I think that's you use those type of considerations to make those comparisons.
Is a very early miscarriage, Kyla.
So I agree. The issue is that when I'm talking about, so typically in medical data, we separate these two things because different things are happening, and it's important to understand what's causing somebody to fail to implant versus what's causing a miscarriage once implantation happens. That's why I'm making these decisions.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so are you asking me, do I think God is killing these children? No, I don't think he's killing them.
So God ensouls.
And I would argue, if we're talking about from a divine revelation perspective, that since the fall, we have things like death, of course. We have things like miscarriage. I don't think that was ever God's original design.
So where's all the moral outrage and upset over the implantation crisis like there is for something like SIDS?
Well, I believe that there should be a lot more research and intervention done into preventing miscarriages, and a big part of the stuff that I work on, like on my podcast,
implantation
and
crisis
work that we have is improving gynecological care and OBGYN care for women, and identifying what are the root causes for so many miscarriages.
So it's justified for a 16-year-old with permanent and severe mental health problems to commit suicide. So if we're just assuming permanent, if the hypothetical is, we assume for this, the mental health is it is permanent, and it will continue to bring him such amount of discomfort that it'll be net negative throughout the rest of his life, then for the hypothetical, in the real world we should not assume that's going to be the case, because presumably a 16-year-old has quite a long life ahead of them, and we obviously have a lot of mechanisms by which to treat depression and everything. So if the question is, which I'm assuming there's more to the question is, if we should offer MAiD to a 16-year-old with a mental health problem, no, we should not be doing that.
especially women who suffer recurrent miscarriages. One of my good friends is Dr. Lauren Rubal, and she has a health clinic that does restorative reproductive medicine to identify exactly this question. And the reality is there are things you can do to prevent miscarriage. And this is, I think, a part of our healthcare field that has been, I think, ignored. And I do think it deserves more study and attention and funding, quite frankly. I mean, we've been at the example, like President Trump tried to, let's fund IVF,
Just for the sake of time, can I follow up on some questions? Sorry. Yeah. So by your view, if life begins at conception, you're saying God is essentially allowing up to 60% to just fail to implant, right? Alongside the fact that about 20 to 30% after that also miscarry after implantation. My question to you is, should every miscarriage be investigated? Because it could be an instance of a mother killing her baby.
No, and when you say God is allowing 60% of miscarriages, I mean, 100% of us in this room are going to die. God is going to allow that to happen.
But we're pretty upset about
that. Wow. That doesn't mean that God is not just. It just means that after the fall, we all die.
Sure, but I believe that God is logical, right? I think that he's a decently rational being, and the idea that he is just damning 60% of souls to just die by failing to implant.
I think 60% is too high. We don't have evidence of that, by the way.
So most of that is for implantation specifically. The best numbers are 40 to 60%.
There's not conclusive evidence.
So it's around half. It's around half.
That's not conclusive. That's
MPD diagnosis is generally considered untreatable. The expected likelihood of cure is essentially 0. I don't know what NPD is. Narcissistic personality disorder. But obviously Chipringo, quite obviously, you're not just considering whether or not you have a permanent disability. Being nearsighted may very well be a permanent disability, but it's going to be a function of how much suffering that disability is going to bring you throughout your life, essentially. Obviously, I would never say otherwise.
It's not a theory that some people have. This has absolutely been tested. I agree that the science could be better.
Here's the answer
with the numbers doesn't deal with the fact that 50% of human lives die from failure to implant. So where's the moral outrage and issue over implantation crisis?
As I said before, I think that women's healthcare, especially our reproductive healthcare, is abysmal. It's all about abortion rights today, which is sick and disgusting. It should be more focused on having a healthier fertility. And I think that one of the reasons we have so much miscarriage, including so much infertility, because a lot of people are struggling with infertility today.
Because we aren't teaching enough abstinence-only education.
A lot of that might be early miscarriages they might not even know they're having, right? So that could be what's happening. And I think that's a huge problem that should be addressed, Kyla.
And I think
sexual
it does revolution.
Resources from top down. I think the federal government should actually be investing in restorative reproductive
national institution that is Christian, that is focused specifically on the implantation crisis. Name me one.
Well, as an example, there's natural womanhood.
And they're focused on implantation crisis?
They're focused, I don't think they call it implantation crisis.
Well,
there's
people dedicated
50% of those who are born are damned to go to hell because they're not Christian. This is true. I mean, it's only true under some Christian worldviews, to be fair. But under many of them, that's also true. That's all baked into NPD. Their likelihood of maintaining any positive relationship is essentially, I don't think that's the case. But even outside of having positive relationships, Michael, you can there's no way you honestly believe that people with NPD live net negative lives, right? I find it highly suspect that even you believe that. Oh, wait. I don't believe most people with this live negative lives. And I would assume, even if there's no cure, you would imagine there's treatments for it to mitigate some of the stuff, just like there is with essentially every mental illness.
13. So where's the implantation crisis?
They absolutely talk about the high rates of miscarriage.
Exactly. So imagine a woman.
I don't understand what is the difference between doing MAiD for a 16-year-old who has had a severe MH problem 100% of their life and a 90-year-old who has had severe mental health problems 100% of their life. I don't know. I'm not saying what's the difference between doing MAiD for a 16-year-old who has mental health problems and doing MAiD for a 9-year-old who has severe. So unless you're doing a new hypothetical on me, the thing I mentioned, easy money, was that, well, first of all, I was talking about the types of evidence you would use. I was not even talking about what was moral and just necessarily, but I was saying, in order to make these comparisons, you would look at the type of evidence in these cases. And in the example of the 9-year-old man, the past I never mentioned him having a past mental health problem. What I said was if there was a 90-year-old man who got diagnosed with prostate cancer and that would bring him great discomfort over the next 6 months and he would die in 6 months from now, most people have the intuition that in many cases the old man himself, right, have the belief that it's better for him to undergo some type of MAiD, undergo some type of euthanasia, as opposed to living out that painful death over the course of 6 months that's outside of his control and would bring him a lot of suffering. So the difference is, if that's what you're asking about, that's a hypothetical you're about to ask about. Obviously, the difference is, for that man, the expected value of euthanasia is plausibly quite high, and for the 16-year-old, quite negative, right? The old man, for one, just doesn't have much time left anyways. 2, that's going to be quite a bit of suffering involved, both for him and potentially on behalf of his family as well, in the sense that, there's some amount of discomfort in seeing your family member die a slow and painful death as opposed to a death of his own choosing that's more peaceful with euthanasia. But for the 16-year-old, they have first of all, in the case of mental health, I think we have good reasons to believe why, the mental health problems of a 16-year-old could be more temporary than the prostate cancer of the 90-year-old man, right? And second of all, they obviously have much greater potential in the places their life could go, in the amount of happy experience they could experience at the age of 16 than at the age of 90. And I guess there's potential both ways in terms of the effects on relationships or whatever. I guess someone with a severe mental illness could go on to have like a net negative effect on many other people in some cases, but there's also at least a potential for, just generally positive effects. I think I believe that. I don't immediately extend to suicides though. It seems very unlikely to me people with NPD have net negative lives, but maybe there's some evidence that would convince me. I really don't know.
Well, she has a very low
you should talk to
implantation
my
rate.
friends. I mean, there's absolutely
I don't need
doctors
to.
who
I don't
work.
need to
Margaret
because I
Twain is another
understand-
one.
I understand
She's
that
fantastic.
people do not think that life begins at conception functionally. Nobody acts this way. This is why
That's
every person
completely
picks a
untrue.
baby. Every person picks
That's
a baby
totally untrue.
until about the second trimester. That's just a reality. So
That's
imagine
not-
you have a
that's
woman
fine.
who
I
knows that
disagree.
she has a very low implantation rate and high miscarriage rate. She aborts 90% spontaneous abortion of her babies. Is she recklessly endangering her children by continuing to try to have a child?
So you're saying women who have high miscarriage rates should they be basically prevented from conceiving? Is your argument?
I'm
it sounds
asking
like.
you if life
And I would
begins
say
at
absolutely
conception.
not.
Thank you
They
for that
should
open
not. Can we go
discussion.
10 more minutes? Can we do that, guys? Is that allowed? I love talking to her. Is that okay? I'm sorry.
We had to set
moderators.
aside time for Q&A if you wanted to.
If folks are okay, she said she's here all night. I can be here a little later. My kids are asleep. I don't know.
We could extend for 5 minutes if that
5 more
works.
minutes. Is that okay with you, Kyla?
You guys paid for me to be here. You have
Okay.
all of my evening. Do not worry about
Yay.
it.
Okay.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
No, this is a great line of conversation around miscarriage. And
Okay.
yeah, so I think we agree. It sounds like that there should be more help to prevent miscarriage and understand miscarriage.
Sure, but by
and I know
your
great people working
logic,
on that.
isn't she, if we're talking about intention, mens rea, do you know the 4 categories of mens rea? And again,
Tell me.
not a gotcha.
Tell me them.
Okay,
Yeah.
there is intentional, right? You're intending to do it.
Right.
There is reckless. There is, hold on, I should actually have them written down somewhere. Purpose, knowledge, recklessness, and negligence.
Great.
Okay. Yeah. So in the case of
Something
somebody
is
who
disconnected
fails
from my
to implant,
computer.
let's just
I
say
heard a
all she does is
sound.
fail to
Don't know what it
implant,
was,
But it's
though.
99%
The baby
of the
is failing to implant in the mother.
The baby is failing to implant in the mother.
And you're giving me a hypothetical. 99% of the time when she gets pregnant, the baby.
There's a certain point we can just say, yeah, you shouldn't have to go through this anymore and let them go through MAiD. It shouldn't be a certain age, but after X amount of treatments. I mean, you should weigh more than just their age, obviously, but I think all you are making some pretty sick assumptions and need to reconsider the value of living your life out as God intended. True, even if you are a euthanasia. Wow, toxoplasmosis.
Fails to implant.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Never
Okay.
consider this.
And so you're asking me, do I think it should be illegal for her to
Isn't she at least recklessly and arguably knowingly exposing many of her children to death and potentially worse than someone who has an early abortion?
So
at least
my
genuinely
answer is a little
believes it's not
nuanced here.
person?
My answer is a little nuanced here. You might like this, you might hate it. I don't know. We'll see. But I would say if she knew this was happening, right? I do think it would be reckless for her to continue to pursue to get pregnant without identifying other and working on her health.
Let's
generally,
go.
because
Never
it
actually.
could
I
be
feel
the
like
case that
Destiny
she's
brought
not
up the same point in like both of the debates. I've never actually heard Lila make that concession before.
taking care of herself, and so she's just like trying to get pregnant again.
But
and again.
now she's going to separate out the legal view, which is funny because she's been complaining about Erudite trying to separate out the legal view the whole time. But all right,
She's not
let's go.
identifying, okay, how do I become healthier so I can be a safe harbor for this baby? So I would, and that doesn't mean she doesn't have the right to children. It doesn't mean that, she's a murderer if the child dies via miscarriage, but it does mean I do think she has a responsibility. And I think all mothers have this responsibility to care for their bodies, period, and to certainly care for their bodies when their body is caring for another.
Say she doesn't. Should she be investigated for reckless endangerment of her child?
Walk that out more. Like, what's an example of this? She's like slamming alcohol and like smoking. And
No,
things
she
like
just okay, B, right? I have something called Sjogren's disease and a couple of other like autoimmunes. It makes it very hard for things to be patentable.
But is she like going out and like partying
No,
hard?
it's just
she's just sick herself.
It's just natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If she's just sick herself, no, I don't think she should be prohibited because she can't.
Why?
She can't help that. But if she's like hard partying and drinking, doing drugs and drinking, yeah, I don't think that should be legal. I think that should not be legal to hard party and drink and do drugs when you're pregnant.
The issue is that if I don't intend to kill somebody and I still hit them with my car, I'm still morally and legally culpable.
You can
for
still
that
be
death.
culpable for manslaughter. Yeah.
Agreed. So how is she, even though she's not intending it?
Because
right, in
even
this
come on,
case,
even under our existing legal
she's
system,
being reckless.
Yeah,
By your definition. By my definition, it's fine.
But
She
even
can keep trying.
I think our legal system actually does a good job on this for born children because our legal system right now, if you're a parent and you commit neglect because you don't feed your child, you don't bathe your child, or you don't whatever your child, right? You can go to jail regardless of your mens rea, right? You can actually be charged with criminal neglect, and actually you can.
How does that not
be
apply
additionally charged if
to?
you were like.
You can probably neglect a child in a way that's obviously like not under your control either. In the same way, a woman with a high rate of miscarriage would. But okay.
An addict. and that's one of the reasons you could lose custody entirely as well. But I think that if you're just somebody who has more difficulty parenting because of a disability that you have, or you're sick, so you spend a lot of time in the hospital, and therefore you're not there for your children as much as you would like to be, I don't think that means you should then go to jail or something for that. And our current system,
but our current system would potentially, foster care would start happening, right? I've worked with women in this situation where their mental illness is so severe.
Self-treatment approaches are specifically adjusted to psychological nature, MPD, but none so far. So far, no single treatment has proven superior or reliable. No specific. I don't know what you think, Michael. How would the same thing not apply to ADHD? Like, ADHD has no like long-term specific cure that's reliable for every person with it, but I don't think that applies to people with ADHD live net negative lives. Obviously, certainly I don't believe so, and I have ADHD. I don't think almost anyone believes so. It's hard. Like, I wouldn't expect narcissistic personality disorder unless it's like way more severe than what I've read on this Wikipedia article so far to be. Like, that would it would be so insane as to lead to some net negative life. That's crazy. But
I intervene because we recognize that while she's not intending to do something wrong, she still is.
Yeah, and I think that I agree with that. I think the difference is when the baby is unborn, right? You can't grant safe harbor to another person. We don't have the medical technology for that, at least yet. And so I think the better path is to do the best that you can to help the mother and give good care to the mother, which is why I am such a big fan of better women's health care, supporting our pregnancy resource centers, supporting reproductive restorative medicine, etc.
Sure. So I think you said you wouldn't want to investigate her.
I'm not sure about mine.
If she's not hard partying, she's just very sick. No, I would not investigate her.
Okay, so my question to you would basically be, if you want to criminalize...
Always freaks me out. There's women who argue against both one-party divorce and two, abortion. Yeah, it is funny, Lila. I'm pretty sure Lila is also... She might not legally be against one-party divorce, but I don't think she believes divorce is something you can actually really do under her Christian ethics. But an abortion, like, how are they not realizing they're trapping women into abusive relationships when they're just forced to birth baby? Well, Lila, opposite. Like, I think it's fine to have some, like, if you truly believe fucking ensoulment at fertilization or whatever, that you probably should care about unborn fetuses. But I managed to trick the doctor into giving me Adderall. Even after taking 3 focus tests, the system is completely fucked. Based. Okay.
Abortion against people who are seeking it, if you want to make it illegal, at what age do you want investigations to initiate?
Of abortions? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think if there's very clear evidence of a very early term abortion, that should be investigated. For example,
so in the case of the reckless woman, there's nothing wrong with her.
But she's not intentionally. But
she's being
Kyla, come on. There's a difference between intentionally ending the life
not
of a
with mens rea, right?
and a child that is just dying naturally.
I agree that there's a difference between me purposely stabbing somebody and me accidentally running somebody over with my car. Obviously, one is more morally forgivable. The problem is that I'm still morally culpable because recklessness is not an excuse for immoral actions.
But I think being sick when you're pregnant is a little different than like texting and driving or running.
I didn't say texting and driving. You could be sliding. Say I'm driving. I'm being safe, but I happen to hit black ice. My car's been unbeknown to me.
Thank you. That would be the end of that segment.
How are my mom's body going to allow me to reach the ensoulment stage?
Now, Lila and Kyla will each make a closing statement. Lila will present her closing statement for 6 minutes, and then Kyla will follow. You may begin.
I'm speeding it up even more.
Okay. Today we are asking ourselves the question, should abortion be legal? At the beginning of this debate, I defined what abortion was, which hasn't been contested by my esteemed opponent. And that definition included abortion being the intentional taking of an innocent human life. Now, throughout this debate, there has been a debate around the question of, does every human life have rights under the law as legal persons? And of course, my position is that yes, they do. And I gave a wonderful test to determine why that should be the case, which is SLED. And I talked about how...
I can't believe after all the back and forth they did about it, Lila essentially even conceded that she was like smuggling in the premise of a fetus being a person in her opening statement. Like after all of that, and after all that back and forth on stuff like that, we're just going back to this, bro. We're just going back to this. We're just doing the same thing.
How any child that is born, you could use the standard of SLED for that child the same way you could use that standard of SLED for a child that is unborn. And this has yet to be contested by Kyla, so I'm curious if she will contest this in her closing statement. And what is SLED? Let's just revisit this briefly, because my case is that it is always wrong to take an innocent human life, and it should always be illegal to take an innocent human life, intentionally take an innocent human life. Abortion intentionally takes an innocent human life, therefore abortion should be illegal. It's always wrong, it should be illegal.
At least we got the always too now.
The differences between an unborn child and a newborn child. There is very little difference at that stage. There's literally inches of birth canal and minutes between them. Both of these children deserve legal protection. Any standard that Kyla has presented, ultimately under SLED, I think falls short. The one standard that she has presented against SLED has to do with degree of development, your level of development, and that is this murky area of consciousness. But even the standard, I think, falls short because your development, your brain's development does not determine your humanity. I think that...
What does humanity even mean? Is humanity the organism? In that case, true. Is humanity the just personhood? In that case, I obviously think there are good reasons to believe. Why personhood is a mental component, and they didn't even get to have. They didn't talk about that specifically much, actually. They did at least avoid much of like the legal arguments about abortion in fucking Texas and whether or not it actually affected birth rates and stuff, but.
There are people that have severe developmental disorders with their brain, and they're just as much a human. Are
you vegan / vegetarian, Nonfon? I am vegan.
Actually have such a severe developmental brain disorder that you might not even fit Kyla's definition of ensoulment, and you are still, I believe, a person and should have legal rights under the law. And if you have a severe accident after birth and you lose part of your brain, or you have severe brain damage, and so you're missing parts of your brain, or parts of your brain are so damaged they no longer function, you still should be treated with the same legal rights as somebody that does not have those disabilities or those injuries. And so any standard that Kyla can present for why this human life doesn't deserve legal protection versus that human life, I think falls short in the end. And I think it comes back to what kind of country do we want to live in as individuals? Do we want to live in a country that values people based on their development, based on their consciousness and their strength, based on their independence, or do we want to value people based on the fact that they're human? And to be human is enough. And I think a society that is a just one needs to acknowledge every single human life's, not just value, but fundamental human rights, the first of which is life. I want to briefly respond to something Kyla said as well. We didn't get to hash it out as much as I would have liked, but she made this comment about why...
Raised or converted vegan? Converted, I guess.
It's unworkable.
I was vegetarian from pretty young, but nobody else in my family was vegetarian or anything, so converted.
Ultimately, to criminalize abortion because of all the bad outcomes that we will see. And she briefly mentioned Texas. And I think this is an important point for me to conclude with here because in one sense, perhaps, Kyla would support criminalization of abortion if in her view there's not these negative consequences, right?
Make it
and
term
because she supports
on a
criminalization
SLED
of
and push them down the mountain so God can decide what they make, if they make it true.
Why the consequences for why abortion being criminalized is somehow bad. Texas was mentioned as an example. Children being born, an infant mortality rate that spikes because children are born that would have been killed before birth. That's not somehow a lose for pro-life laws, right? Because someone goes into the foster care. What that means is the baby had dignity and was cared for and died naturally instead of being lethally injected or torn apart in utero. When we talk about increased mortality rates for infants in Texas, that's because they weren't aborted before birth, and so they die after birth. That isn't some sort of a lose for pro-life laws. And similarly, to say that, more children might go into a deep care system that needs more loving parents to join to help intentional killing for women, for babies, for families, for all of us. That's where the focus should be. Instead of protecting the legal right to kill a child in the womb for whatever reason, we should focus on ensuring that life is better for everyone, and we have better medical care for everyone, and we care for orphans, and we care for their country was founded.
Thank you. Is that your closing statement?
As a debater, my goal in these discussions is to always cut away information and arguments that do not logically lead us in the direction of truth. One of the things I told you at the very beginning of this conversation is that these things are not simple, that there is theological complexity on this, as we've outlined today. Exodus 21 is a good example. Why did God tell Moses, with the early Hebrews, that when a woman who's pregnant is harmed, that it might be okay, essentially, that if the child is lost, child dies as a result of the physical harm that she takes, but the woman doesn't, that the perpetrator would pay a fine. However, if the woman also dies, then it's capital punishment. Do you remember the code of Hammurabi I told you? It's identical to that one. Why would God be agreeing with the code of Hammurabi? If you look at Augustine and Aquinas, they said abortion, while always not ideal, is different after 40 days because they believe the quickening, which is essentially when you can feel the baby punching.
That sounds like safety nets ripped, but you know what's great? Lila does believe that birth should be free. She believes in universal health care for a pregnant woman.
Mom knows it's a circus under there. The quickening is when the baby is for sure ensouled. That was Augustine and Aquinas who believed this. Right? If we actually go back, it wasn't until about basically in the last 100 years, where the papal bull was released to be like, you know what, actually I changed my mind. It's not about ensoulment, it's about conception. But if you notice, the Pope doesn't tell you when the life is ensouled. And as a Christian, that's the most important thing to me here, because it's very important to me that we actually wrestle with this, because our church leaders still to this day wrestle with this. It's not simple. And every single person who wants to insist to you that it is simple is lying to you. That's not an honest analysis of the philosophy and the question at hand. I believe that if anyone has regard for making the world a better place, they should first go through the toil to arrive at true, justified belief. Lila just now said that I haven't contested her definition. I contested it immediately in my intro. I said you don't get to define away the conversation. If you just say abortion equals murder, now there's no conversation to be had because, nobody likes murder. The issue, what it does, is it moves away from the core question of what it means to be human, which is a question Aristotle poses centuries ago. What does it mean to be human? What makes us distinct from animals? What makes us in between demons and angels, essentially, was what he talked about. And what I would suggest to you, my conclusion...
People actually think charity can replace all welfare. How R-worded? Well... Not that many people think it can actually replace our welfare, but the people who like private charity don't want us to have that much welfare in the first place, right? So,
and I could be wrong because it's complicated, is that legally, with the current state of social safety nets, education, healthcare, and child support, abortion must be decriminalized because it improves all of the factors we can all agree matter. We can agree that reducing abortions is good. Canada, per capita, has a lower abortion rate, per capita, despite it being decriminalized for decades at this point. There is also lower childhood poverty, which I agree, childhood poverty doesn't justify killing that baby, but it does put an analysis of saying, what life are we offering to people? Because a woman thinking about an abortion isn't just being willy-nilly and being like, haha, I'm so silly and whimsical, maybe I'll get an abortion today. What she's actually doing is going, when is this life a person? And I'm staring down the face of oftentimes poverty, because a lot of the people who get abortions are moms. And the reason they get it is because they are afraid they can't even caretake for the other 4. And they have to go, I don't know what the right decision is here. It's really complicated. And I'm opposed to a system that imposes tyranny on people's choices.
She thinks that means you might quit religion
they
in
are
the
uncertain
future.
what the answers to do. I want it between doctors and women
True.
because I, trust doctors, by and large, to be good, moral people. I think that they want to not do harm. And I think every doctor understands that personhood matters. They might be like, there's some god-awful doctors. That's true. I want to carve out legal ways to evaluate mens rea, which there already are. Morally, the choice is way less clear. I argued consciousness is a relevant underpinning that we shorthand when we refer to the value of human life. Human consciousness, while immaterial, is believed to emerge from the complexity of the brain, right? Even in the case of these young children with minimal cerebellar activity, we see neuroplasticity taking part.
NotSoErudite is relying on a continuum fallacy. The exact moment is not simple. Providing a line where it's clearly wrong as you see it. That's not what she's saying. She's saying it's not simple in a sense that like the way you answer the question, or like the way you answer these questions is not themselves. It's not simple, right? Or like the question itself is not going to have a simple answer. She's not saying that like just providing a line. She's not saying that you should not provide a line. I don't think there's a continuum fallacy. I think she's just saying someone who's trying to sell you like an easy solution on the stuff, and it seems to be approaching it in a very simplistic manner of the way. I mean, her syllogism, right, is obviously a quite simple and silly thing. I think she's having a bigger issue with the like mechanism that Lila is arriving at the answer with than just saying like setting a line should not be done or whatever, or it's not easy. But
and driving this. I'm using consciousness as a proxy for ensoulment because we definitely care about consciousness, and it's the only immaterial thing that I can point to for both secular people and Christian people to put a finger on. And consciousness, and when it emerges, the best guess is probably something from the brain's development. This is why I could be slid backwards or forwards. Science is evolving, and our understanding of human biology in the brain will make this more clear with time, but for now, this is the best we have. My opponent.
Have you read the case against the child tax credit? No, who's that by?
Has provided exactly 0 justified arguments for why abortion should certainly be criminalized. Has appealed repeatedly to science for her morality and tried to woo you with emotionally loaded anecdotes despite clearly deriving her predilections from religion. Which is okay, by the way. Just be honest about it. This thesis is an insult to British common law and the dream of the American founding fathers. When it comes to issues as historically and currently complex as human life, it is our duty to treat it with the sanctity and the heaviness of what that topic
makes
is.
sense,
and
I
that
guess.
means when you close your eyes and you think about brown and I ask you to think about the red, that means challenging your presumptions. That means wondering where you could be wrong because our brains love to be right. That's what this means. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm only asking you to genuinely, philosophically think about it, and Lila is not doing that.
Thank you, Kyla, for that.
Okay, I don't know if I care about the Q&A section.
And be present this evening. At this point, we'll be moving into the student Q&A period. To start off this segment, Sadie will ask Kyla a question, and then I will ask Lila a question, and then the mic will then be open to the audience to ask a question.
Kyla, currently, when genetic testing reveals an unborn child has Down syndrome or a severe genetic anomaly, most women choose to abort. How do you answer the charge that this phenomenon resembles the eugenics movement a century ago?
It is.
For example,
Very problematic.
the failed embryo.
Thank you.
All right, Lila, in the pro-life movement, there has been mixed feelings and beliefs regarding IVF. For example,
Probably where there are lots of safe haven for them.
So it's a really, really important document so that her children come out.
Yeah. I don't think I care about that shit. Okay, kill me. Thank you for watching, and if you want to help me continue to make content, liking, subscribing, and commenting are all greatly appreciated. You can also make sure to check out my Twitch, my Kick, and my Twitter down below, or consider becoming a member to my YouTube channel, which really helps support me as well.